Good morning.
Hi. Can you hear me?
Yes,
Okay, hold on. It's coming out the wrong speaker. Can you hear me now?
I can hear you.
It's still coming out the wrong speaker. Oh, hold on 1 second. Let me fix my Zoom.
Sure. Good morning.
Um, okay, let's try that. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. Okay, one more time.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay. How are you?
Good. Good morning, Kimia. Kimia, this is Dr. Rochelle. And Kimia's from Stanford Online High School.
Mhm.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too.
Yeah, we'll be starting in a few minutes. The
Okay.
first speaker is gonna start at 12:15. So this what I said in the email, a lot of the participants aren't gonna be live because they're gonna purchase a recording, and I'm also live on YouTube for those
Okay.
who didn't register, we're kind of testing something out.
Sure, absolutely.
Yeah.
There's another parent. Just one moment.
I can hop off camera then until you're ready for me. Thanks.
And it's Natalie who's gonna give the first talk. Um, Kimia, if you can hop on in 2 minutes. And then after that, Natalie can start. Is that okay?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, good. Just one moment. Welcome, everyone. We're gonna get started in another minute with Miss Kimya taking the floor first. And then we'll start with our first talk after her. And I'll introduce you. So I want to welcome everyone to our online workshop, our 2-day workshop, which is Empowered and Educated. It's our first one dedicated to middle and high school students and their families. Yesterday, we had some workshops for our students that included some career workshops, even a workshop with A&E Network, and then one about voting. Very, very good workshops that were done for our students yesterday. And today, the workshops our are for our parents and those who are thinking of homeschooling through high school and those who already are homeschooling through high school. So we're going to have several workshops. But before we start our workshops, we want to hear from Ms. Kimya, who's here from Stanford High School. So one of the things that a lot of parents tend to do during high school years is outsource some of our classes because the students want to start learning more independently. And there's a number of schools out there, but I know Stanford has been around for a very long time. So Kimya, so if you want to take the floor and just talk to us a little bit. If you want to share the screen, I can enable you to do that.
Yes, I have some slides to talk through. Well, I appreciate everyone who's here, and I know a lot of people will watch the recording. I'm Kimia Habibi, and I'm the Director of Admissions and Financial Aid at Stanford Online High School, which has been around since 2006. And way back when I was a homeschooled student, I was homeschooled through most of elementary school and part of middle school. And then my family reached a point, and this is before there were so many online resources. My parents reached a point where the curriculum was too much for them to teach me directly in the old fashioned way. And that's something I still find with homeschooled families is that, particularly for high school or for students who are academically advanced, that getting an option from somewhere else can be helpful. So I will share my slides. And I'm timing myself so that I don't take up too much of your time. Great. You can see the slides, hopefully. Okay, great. So Stanford Online High School is a full school. Students can attend it fully. They can attend from grades 7 through 12 and receive a diploma. But for your audience, where homeschooling or partial homeschooling is part of the plan, we do have the option to just take a couple classes with us. And I'll get into that in more detail. We're one of the oldest online schools that's out there. We are fully accredited. We're based in California, so we have a West Coast based accreditation. And we're fairly large at this point across all of the different students who are enrolled with us. We have about 1,000 students now across grades 7 through 12, but they're mostly in high school for the most part. The middle school group is smaller. And we keep a very small average class size so that in an environment that's not too different from Zoom, students are with their instructor and with their peers talking about material that they've studied beforehand. And they meet every week through the academic year. We have students all over the US, we have students all over the world. So we are serving many different time zones. So your student may have peers from all kinds of different places or backgrounds. We have students who are really excited about learning. The curriculum we offer is pretty advanced, so it does require a dedication to some academic challenge. But there are students who might have other demands on their time. They might prefer homeschooling for certain subjects. However, you want to modulate your child's education. It's possible to add something with us. So we don't use Zoom, we use Adobe Connect, but it can look like Zoom, except there's a big whiteboard space that can be added so students can draw on slides and things like that. And classes take place Monday or Wednesday or Tuesday or Thursday throughout the academic year. So they're assigned to a class session, they need to attend that particular class session. So it's pretty live and structured for being an online curriculum. Instructors are available for questions and things like that. But our students are really focusing on that more advanced discussion of material in class. And we do have science. I know doing science at home, especially as students get older, can be more complex, but we do have ways of doing those more advanced science classes where students will do their labs at home, but we have instructions and materials and things like that. So these are the enrollment options I was talking about. So a student who wants to graduate with our diploma is most likely going to be full-time through all of high school. But for a student who wants to combine with other options, they can enroll as a part-time student, which is 2 to 3 courses in an academic year, or single course. And this can change every year. So one year you could be part-time, next year single course, it's really choose your own adventure. We have academic advisors who can help with ensuring that they're getting a well-rounded curriculum and choosing the right class for them. And the students who are part-time or single course still have access to all of the student life options we have. We have a residential summer program that some students come to, and meetups sponsored by our parents in different parts of the country and internationally. So for a homeschooled student, you could perhaps do part-time or single course. If a student is attending a full schedule brick and mortar, we recommend just doing a single course. Just the workload is more appropriate at that level than adding 2 or 3 more courses to a full level. We build the schedule around our students every year. So I can't say what the schedule will be next year. It'll be built again in the spring to accommodate all those time zones, to accommodate the flexibility of what various students need. So the class that they need, they would enter, and then the times that they need, they would enter into our system. And then we are able to meet many requests, not 100%, but pretty close. Our instructors are great and our students love them. Most of them have PhDs in their field, and they're very academically oriented people, and we love engaging with each other, and they serve as club advisors. They're on committees at the school. They are part of studies that we do on ourselves. And the coursework is designed by them. So we're not using any outside curriculum or outside models. It's just all from the school. Middle school, if that's of interest, has some resources that are focused more towards middle school than the high school students. So they have middle school specific homerooms, and a homeroom is a once a week thing that a student can attend to engage with a teacher and a different set of peers who are all around the same grade level. Well, as well as middle school specific wellness counselors and middle school specific academic advisors. Our Parents Association does a lot of the in-person events set up. So there's some events that happened last weekend as a big sort of kickoff to the school year, and all kinds of other things that they come up with for families to get together a couple times a year in a given area. This is just more of a map visualization of where we are around the world. It's concentrated in certain areas because only certain time zones really work with the West Coast time zones. We don't want students taking class in the middle of the night since it's not healthy for them. There's a few larger in-person events. Several of them are here where I am in the San Francisco Bay Area in California, but we also have events on the East Coast, and we like to utilize Stanford campus where we can. So we are part of Stanford University. We're a unit within Stanford University, so we're able to book their facilities for things for our students when we do get together in person. The model that we're using, this flipped classroom model of preparing for class in advance, attending class live, digging into deeper discussion of material, is much more like what a student will do in college than what is traditionally done in a high school. So our students usually feel pretty prepared to manage their own schedule, to make sure that they're getting things together in between class, and to start analyzing what they learn instead of just taking it in. So they usually feel more comfortable than some of their peers when they get into college. So we do have an application process. We can't admit every student who applies, and that includes for just attending part-time or just attending for a single course. There is financial aid and a financial aid application if needed. There's a lot of resources. We've had a long time to develop everything that we offer in terms of student support, student life, and curriculum. And reasons that may be of interest would be looking at our course catalog and seeing if there's something there that fits a need that your student has, or maybe they would just like a live class environment for something where they're engaging students with other students online. And our application deadline is in January for both admission and financial aid. And we're having much more extensive events than my very short description here that you could sign up for as well to hear more and understand more of this. So I will cede the floor, and I appreciate your time.
Thank you so much, Kimia. I will in my email blast, I'll send out the link. But if you have any other flyers you want to email me, I can include that. And
Sure.
yeah, it's a really, really good option for especially sometimes I think in homeschooling our children get ahead of us in some subjects that we're not able to keep up with them. So actually that's a good thing. So thank you so much for your time. Does anybody have any questions? Okay, looks like they don't.
No questions, but I definitely want to comment. I think that I think you're right on point that they get ahead of us in certain things. So yes, absolutely. I definitely appreciate that honesty that you just brought.
It's been happening to homeschooled parents for a long time, but
yeah,
as things just get more advanced in high school, it's a lot to teach it as a parent-directed class.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to be more prepared for my younger group than I was for my older group.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I have
Okay.
a question. What are the application process? What are you looking for a middle school student? Just trying to think ahead as well.
Yeah. So it's a pretty typical application process, but obviously we're expecting kind of different levels of things out of different ages of students. So we want some good writing from the student, but we're not expecting a high school level essay necessarily. We just want some academic writing that they've done in addition to their their transcripts, and there's some recommendations, and we have a Q&A on the website about what to do as a homeschooled family for recommendation letters. So it's still a reasonably full application process to do.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thanks so much. Anybody else? Okay. Thanks again, Kimmy, and I'll be in touch, definitely.
Great. Thank you, everyone.
You're welcome to stay with us, or, it's up to you. So,
Yeah,
thank
I
you.
can hang in for a little bit. Thanks.
Okay, I am gonna move things along. I'm really excited to introduce our next speaker. I included one of her talks in the chat. She was actually she's an author and a TEDx speaker, and actually her TED Talk has over 20,000 views. So whenever you guys have the time, please watch it, and what her motivation was to homeschool. Her name is Natalie Mack. She's our next speaker. And like I said, she's an author and 23-year veteran military home educator with over 22 years, I'm sorry, of service to military homeschooling families and military homeschool support group leadership. She's known for her words of encouragement, advocacy for homeschooling, particularly during the journey from high school to college. So Natalie also earned her BA in political science and Spanish. So she speaks several languages. I know Spanish isn't the only one. From Spelman in Atlanta, Georgia, and received her MED from George Washington University in Washington, D.C. She's a mom of 5, 4 homeschooled to college graduates, and a 12th grader who's probably already graduated by now. She's still being homeschooled, I guess. She's newly retired Navy chaplain spouse after serving alongside her husband for 34 years. And she founded Natalie Mack LLC, a homeschool consultation service. And she's also the founder of Military Homeschoolers Association and the podcast Base to Base Military Homeschooling. Additionally, Natalie serves the military community outreach coordinators for HSLDA, and she's a frequent podcast guest. Natalie is the author of 101 Tips for Homeschoolers, and several articles with Old Schoolhouse, Military Family Magazines, and Military Family Advisory Network. So Natalie, I give you the floor. You've probably done a lot more since that bio was written.
I am so excited to be here, Gisela. Thank you so much, everyone. I'm excited. And I thought, oh my gosh, I probably should have shortened what I gave you because I'm thinking, who is that? It sounds exhausting, but it's an exciting life, and I'm thankful for it. I'm thankful to be able to speak to you. We're going to talk about NCAA. So if you have any students who are interested in playing college sports, this is going to be an introductory presentation. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, and let's hope technology works the way it should. And we're going to get going. I'm going to start with the slideshow, if we can get it to do what it should. Okay. All right. So like Gisela said, I'm Natalie Mack again. I'm passionate about homeschooling. And I'm really also very passionate about helping our homeschooled high schoolers and parents realize that you do not need to pivot back to public school just because you have an athlete who wants to play in college. So that's the message for today. How do you do that? We're going to talk a little bit about the process. There's probably, you may still have questions afterwards. So I do have a QR code at the end. If you need additional help, you can reach out. But this is intro, but I think it will give you a good platform to get started, okay? So NCAA eligibility for homeschooled athletes. This is my dear family. Let me go ahead and move my toolbar a little bit out of the way for me. This is my dear family. Gisela mentioned 34 years of military service. So obviously it wasn't me. I could never put on the military boots and serve. But my dear husband was a Navy chaplain. And so we've moved all over the world. As you can count, we have the 5 kids. And our youngest here is 12th grade. So he is just is trying to figure out the next step. I mean, we got some options that he's definitely looking at in terms of colleges. But he's the baby of 5, and our oldest here in the blue is 32, just got married the end of June. And she also, all of them have been homeschooled, every last one of them. And I'm starting my clock just so I can keep track. And then our youngest one is the one whose story has pretty much got me here to be able to speak on NCAA because she was the athlete. They have all played sports, but she's the one who knew at age 7, I want to play Division 1. And I laugh when I think about it. I'm like, what did a 7-year-old know about Division 1? Well, she knew something enough to continue to pursue it throughout her journey and then on to high school, and obviously she played in college. So the rest of the kids have their own journey, and I think that's what Gisela posted is my TEDx. That's where I talk about our journey. And I always tell families, our journey was ours. Your journey is going to be equally fantastic, and it's going to be the one that your family should be on. It's going to fit your family, right? So I just share my journey as encouragement, inspiration, but not that it's the only path. We all know college is not necessarily the only path after you finish homeschooling, but it is one path, and it is one that a lot of students want to pursue. And there are students who are homeschooled who passionately want to play college soccer. So here we are. So one thing I want to make sure that I say at the beginning, eligibility and admission are totally different. So we're going to be talking about NCAA, which is the Eligibility Center. Okay, they're the ones that govern whether or not your high schooler has completed everything sufficiently academically to be able to survive, do well, be successful at the college level. They aren't accessing or they're not assessing your students' athletic ability. So having said that, though, some families sometimes think, oh, if we go through the NCAA eligibility process, then our student is admitted to the college. And no, that's not the case. Academic admission is just that. You have to go through the college. So you'll have a student who will become NCAA eligible, but they still must go through all of the college admissions requirements to get a space at that university. Now, I mentioned something often as well called the broken leg theory, or broken leg principle, probably is more accurate. And what does that mean? Not that I'm wishing anyone that's an athlete to have a broken leg. What it actually means is that make sure you talk to your athlete about not necessarily being so excited about any type of potential scholarship opportunity, but make sure that the school that is offering it, that it's a school they would want to be at if they were to get injured and could no longer play the sport that they love. So that's the broken leg. Does it pass the broken leg test? Is this a school that you see yourself at as a scholar, as a student? The athletics is important because obviously that's what the student wants to do there, but you're there to learn, you're there to be successful, you're there to graduate, ideally in 4 years or whenever you get completed, right? So eligibility and admission are totally 2 different things. They're 2 different tracks. You have to pursue both if you have a college athlete, a college-bound athlete. So we're going to talk a little bit briefly about NCAA and NAIA and what's the difference. We'll talk about the eligibility process for NCAA, the homeschool toolkit, academic requirements, lessons that I learned, and then I have my QR code. So the NCAA, as you can see here on the screen, is the National Collegiate Athletic Association. There's another organization called NAIA, which is National Association of Intercollegiate Athletics. They're totally different organizations. You can see here at the bottom of the PowerPoint, NCAA is the eligibility organization. They have an eligibility center. They govern D1, which is Division 1 or Division 2. The NAIA basically, in some kind of way, I want to say governs Division 3. It's a different process totally. So if you have a student who wants to play in college, one of the first things you want to help your student begin to look at is at what level do they really want to play? Now, some of that's going to be based on how well they play, right? How good are they? There's a lot of good athletes. So I also caution parents that because you have a good athlete, and we always see our athlete as fantastic and phenomenal, right? So, and that's valuable most of the time, but sometimes we may think, oh, our student is so dynamic, they're going to get picked up and they're going to get offered a scholarship and they're going to be great and they need to go Division I, definitely. Maybe not. I think you need to do some research. And I will tell you a little bit about the differences and why I think you should do some research. Division I, Division II, the goal is, yes, academics and graduate, yes, but it really is very focused on the sport. Whatever that sport is that the student gets an opportunity to play in college, that pretty much is the framework that they will be attending that university as. So what does that mean? That means that it governs a lot of their 4 years at college. It is a priority. It is sometimes a little bit of a difficulty balancing and wanting to do other things in college because at the Division I, Division II, a lot is demanded of the athletes. And depending upon the conference that the school is in, the level of play can be even more challenging and competitive. So that's part of what you might want to look at when you're talking about and having a conversation, right? That your student wants to play at the college level. Now, you have a student who loves the sport and is dynamic, but wants to do some other things in college. And, yeah, they want to play a lot of soccer, for example. They want to play a lot of football, they want to swim a lot. Yes, okay, but they really want to have a little bit more going on in college. And they really maybe are highly academic. Well, that's probably not necessarily the way to say it because I don't want to imply that Division I and Division II, those students are not highly academic. They are. They really have to stay on top of their schedule. But I guess it's a different playing ground. So just do the research there, okay? And we can talk about that later. If you have any questions, I can kind of break that down a little bit more. But we'll go on to the rest of what I want to show you. So the next thing that I wanted to show you was this screenshot of the NCAA homeschool toolkit. This is the homeschool toolkit that the student, and particularly you, right, the parent, because we function as the guidance counselor in this task of going through the toolkit is a guidance counselor task, right? But I also say bring your student into it so your student knows what is involved in the task because it's important, because eventually you're launching them to college where they're going to have to make all kinds of decisions on their own. So bring them into the process. Where do you get this toolkit, you might ask? You go to the NCAA Eligibility Center. You can just do Google NCAA Eligibility Center. It's going to pop up at the top because there isn't another one. And you're going to go to the website and you're going to just download the homeschool toolkit. And you want to follow it. I used to say like your Bible, but I don't want to equate anything with the Bible, at least from my faith vantage point, but almost like the Bible, I should say, you want to follow it because the rules are such that they want what they want and they want you to provide that information in order to be able to assess your student academically, to be able to declare your student as eligible to play, as eligible to do well in college successfully, academically, okay? So Division I and Division II have very similar academic requirements, meaning requirements that the student has to meet in order to be considered eligible at each division level. Now, I'm not going to share Division III academic requirements because they fall under NAIA, and quite honestly, under NAIA, Division III is all about that individual college or university. There are no requirements to play D3. The requirements are literally, what does that school say you need to meet in order to get admitted, to be accepted to college? All right. But Division I and Division II, there are academic requirements. It is a higher level of play. It is a more demanding level of play. Many homeschoolers accomplish this. This is not terribly difficult process to go through, but I just wanted to, let you know the differences there. So as you see on the screen, there's a lot of words here. And like I said, this is an intro kind of presentation, but Division I academic requirements. So you have to earn 16 NCAA approved core courses. So if you're in high school already, meaning you have a student in high school, core courses. So core courses, the core categories or subject categories are going to be English, math, science, or social studies, and foreign language. Those are just, whether it's NCAA or not, that's just high school verbiage that is important to know. So the NCAA says if you have an athlete who wants to become eligible at the Division I, they need to earn 16 of these. And so you see they need to earn 4 Englishes, meaning they need to accomplish and be enrolled and complete successfully 4 English courses during their high school, which most students do. Math has to be Algebra 1 or higher in at least 3. Most students are 3 or 4. So you see, it's not necessarily anything different than what a college-bound student is probably going to have, but it is important that they have it. There's really no leeway otherwise. That's the difference, right? So science, at least 2 sciences, 1 year of lab, and then an additional year of English, math, or science. And then social science is 2 courses. And then they need 4 additional years of English, math, science, social science, world language, or non-doctrinal religion and philosophy. What does that mean? Well, you see the word doctrine in that non-doctrinal. That means that religion or philosophy, but really the religion course, is not a doctrine religion course, meaning it's not Catholicism, it's not converting someone to Baptist. It's not talking about becoming a Methodist, those types of things, doctrine, right? It's really could be like a world religion class. It can be a class that's just talking about religion in general, not doctrinal. So you also have to complete 10 of those 16 before the start of the 7th semester. So you have 2 semesters in a year. So we have freshman, sophomore, junior, right? That's 6 semesters. So before the 7th semester, right, which is 12th grade, the beginning of 12th grade, fall of 12th grade, you have to have completed 10 of all those 16 before that. And at least out of those 10, 7 have to be in English, math, or science, okay? So and then they have a rule that once you start 9th grade, once your student starts 9th grade, the clock begins to tick. So they have to complete the 16 core course credits within the 8 academic semesters, or what we consider 4 consecutive academic high school years. They have a minimum GPA of a 2.3, which is low for most homeschoolers, but then it varies. I'm not necessarily going to generalize like that, but in general, right? But it's the minimum, 2.3. And submit that final transcript with proof of graduation to the Eligibility Center. So all of this that I'm covering is going to be in that toolkit. Understand, you see how I talked at the beginning about eligibility and admissions are totally different. You notice the GPA is 2.3. So know that every student that is picked up to play Division I soccer, meaning they get offered an opportunity to play at a particular university for the sport that they love, everyone's not going to be offered a scholarship. So just because you become eligible doesn't mean you get scholarship money. So if you're applying for admission because you have to get admitted to the school you want to play at, then understand 2.3, depending upon the school, is going to be low. It's not likely to get you admitted and you're going to need additional money because even if you do get offered a scholarship, it's not going to be that much. Now, think about this. You're a college coach. Imagine you are a college coach and you have students who already have been on scholarship who are still playing. They may be sophomores. Well, they would have to be. They would be sophomores, juniors, or seniors. And you've already committed to them and they've been playing well. So they have money. As a coach, you have to make sure you still are going to, fund their scholarship money. So you have a certain amount for those freshmen. And so they allocate it based on a couple of different factors. So you wanna realize that the student really is probably going to need to have a higher GPA. Okay, I hope that is clear. Division II academic requirements, again, NCAA, the 16 are always going to be there, but they change a little bit. Like now it's English is 3 instead of the 4. So you see the difference already. Math is 2 instead of 3. Algebra 1 is always the high school math level. That's always the beginning of high school math. And then science is 2. That was the same. So some of them are the same, but the English and math changes. And then the GPA dropped down just a smidgen, down to 2.2. And of course, the final transcript has to be still submitted, right? So when we're looking at these, we really want to make sure that our student is you and your student are sitting down as early as possible, downloading that homeschool toolkit and looking at the requirements and planning the courses that your student is going to take. They can enroll in dual enrollment. That is allowed. They can take some online classes. They can do classical conversations. They can do co-op. Okay. But you want to strategize what classes are we going to take to meet these requirements to get these done by for Division I by what? By the start of 7th semester, which is 12th grade. Now, understand what's happening at that beginning of 12th grade. Well, the student is not only making sure they have all this done, obviously that's going to be a large piece of your task too, as the guidance counselor parent. But the student also is going to be focused on applying to college, and that's still a big chunk of your task as well. And they're going to maybe take some of the standardized tests, and that's going to be a big chunk of your responsibility as well, not to take the test, but to sign them up, find the school that they can take those SAT or ACT tests at. Now, one thing you may have noticed, there's no standardized test requirement. So they got rid of that, which is great, I think, I know years ago when my daughter went through this process, they had a sliding scale. So meaning, your SAT, your GPA. So if you had a higher GPA, you could have a lower SAT or ACT score. So, but they completely have gotten rid of that being a requirement. Now, again, what am I saying? And I know I sound like a broken record, but I don't think I can say these type of things too much. Just because the NCAA Eligibility Center isn't requiring the standardized tests in SAT or ACT does not mean that college or university your student is applying to doesn't require it. Okay? So don't look at this as, oh, this is all we have to follow academically. Even if this matches up with the courses or the requirements that the school has placed upon you for admissions, check into the SAT and ACT requirement and start early. Test familiarity is a thing. It is a thing. It makes a difference how early a student starts preparing for those type of tests. They are often the score in many cases translates to potential merit scholarship. Merit means academic scholarship based on how well your student has done in high school, how high their GPA is, how high the SAT or ACT score is. So you want to look at those things as well. So they're not specifically, like I said, they're not part of the NCAA eligibility process, but they are in most cases part of college admissions, and your student you have to jump through both both hoops almost at the same time. So the earlier you plan and lay this out, it's not like, oh my gosh, I got to figure this out. Now I'm going to show you something else as well. And so one thing I wanted to talk about before I talk about this transcript that's on the screen is the toolkit defines homeschooling. All right. So I'm not going to go into a lot about the definition. I'm just going to read a few things, but I want you to just recognize what it says, what the toolkit says. It says, generally, if a parent or guardian or tutor creates the curriculum, provides instruction, assesses the coursework, and or awards grades and credit, the student is considered to be a homeschooled student athlete. Learning at home does not necessarily equate to being homeschooled. Because of the tremendous growth of online and virtual education, a student may be able to learn at home through an online school with online teachers, which would not be considered parent, guardian directed homeschool. So you want to follow the toolkit. It will talk to you and help you understand what courses will count where, okay? And so what I wanted to also say, when you are applying for eligibility, there are different levels that you actually can apply for, and I want to cover that a little bit before we get to this transcript that I popped up on the screen. Probably a little bit too early, but it's okay. The NCAA Eligibility Center allows parents to choose from 3 account options to register. So you can choose the one that is right for you. You only need to create 1 account. So whichever one you choose, you can pivot from. This is what I mean. A free profile account is typically what I recommend, because if you have a student, hopefully at 9th grade, you're going through this process, you're downloading the toolkit, then you and the student are going to be looking at it and saying, okay, what do I need to do at this point? What type of classes am I going to take? Is this going to be really what I want to pursue? So just go with the free account, because once you get a little bit past 9th grade, you may have more clarity. Your student is like, oh yeah, I really do want to do this. They could change, right? I mean, so look at it like that to do the free account, but there are a couple of other ones as well. So there's something called an amateurism only certification. It is basically those international college-bound student athletes. Those tend to be the amateurism only. Might be a student who is at what we call a JUCO or a junior community college, and they want to transfer and they want to play at the Division I or Division II, which, by the way, that is not an uncommon thing for homeschoolers who say, oh, I want to save some money on college and I want to go to my local community college and get an associate's degree, a 2-year degree, right? But I really want to play at the college level. I'm good if I don't play 4 years at the D1 level, but I do want to play some. So some students will go through that community college, do those 2 years, and then they apply to transfer, and they'll get a transfer spot. That's what I call it. It's not probably the technical term, but they'll get a transfer spot on that team potentially, right? They still have to try out, and the coach still has to choose them. So it's not an automatic, but the amateurism only is a potential option for a student who is in that particular case. The other is an academic and an amateurism certification account. So it combines both, and it's really the account for the college-bound student athlete. Like you might have a student who's like, I definitely want to play college at the Division I and Division II. You've seen the student, and this is what I tell parents: assess your student. Being excellent in your eyes is one thing. Being excellent according to what the coaches are looking for is a totally different thing. That's one point. The second thing is that being excellent on the field even if a coach says you are, doesn't necessarily mean that you want to play at the Division I or Division II. So like I said at the beginning, have that type of conversation. Be very comfortable having that conversation as a parent. And you're not saying to your student, oh, I don't think you can cut it. I don't think you can make it. But you're also helping them understand what the reality of life is going to be like. And it's a fabulous opportunity. So please don't hear any like, oh, it's doomsday. My daughter loved it. But it was a requirement, it was a high level play and it was a requirement. So you just kind of want to think about some of those things as well. So that combination account is the one that, for those students who are definitely like on point, I'm ready, let's go. The other thing is take an official visit. Go check that school out because you want to make sure, again, that broken leg, you want to make sure that the school is one that your student is going to want to be at, right? And when you go take an official visit, make sure you sign in, like, you schedule online with the university for whatever date they offer the tour, and you go and they're gonna ask. Now, most times they'll pass around a sign up, sheet that you're there, or they'll check you in at the front. Either way, just make sure you get checked in because colleges, admissions offices rather, look at that squeaky wheel, right? Who's really interested, who really wants it, because it's a business. Colleges are a business, right? You may not have thought about it like that, or maybe you realize that. Maybe that's why you're like, oh man, college debt is a thing, because it is. So they're in the business of making money, and they also have a lot of expenses that require them to charge. And so make sure it's a place that you visited as much as if you're able. Now, you may not be, but go on the website. College admissions websites are incredible now compared to years ago, where students had to wait to get the brochures in the mail and look through it. And it was like, oh, you couldn't get that feel. But the admissions websites now are really awesome. So if you can't go in person, make sure you and your student do due diligence in canvassing these college websites. Also, part of this process is if you get offered a slot, a scholarship slot, or a spot on a team, which will come from the coach. It won't come from the NCAA because remember, they only clear you academically. So you got a couple of factors you're looking at. You got NCAA eligibility, you got college admissions, and the coach. 3 people you got to pass go, right? 3 people have to let you go through in order for your athlete to get where they want to get, which is to be an athlete playing in college at the Division I, II, or even 3 level, like we talked about. So part of that process is maybe looking at going to college-bound athletic camps in the summer between, your high school years. Check out different universities that have the sport that your student wants to play. If your student plays multi-sport, I don't think they can't play both. I don't think at the Division I level, I don't think that they can, but I might be wrong. So we need to check with that. But either way, because some of them cross seasons, right? So, but you definitely want to, make sure that that if they get offered a slot, then they're going to have to sign what's called a national letter of intent. And there's a day, it's called National Signing Day, and it's when athletes, are signing their letter of intent. People turn into a big ceremony. Your high school coach that has been there alongside, or and for homeschoolers, some states you may be able to play at the high school, right? And other states don't allow that. So there's that piece. So you may have your what I call your travel, a sport coach, right? Because you may be paying for that high level competitive play during high school so that they can be scoutable, right? The coaches will scout them out. So either way, people turn this into a ceremony, the National Signing Day. So look into that as well. Now, if you decide that your student and you can see your student is really ready to roll for college and playing at the Division I and Division II, then like I said, look at that combination academic and amateurism certification account, and it's $100, and it's one-time fee. All right. So just wanted to talk about that a little bit. Now, let's talk here at this transcript example that's been up here on the screen for a bit. So there was a point when NCAA had a particular template that you had to use. All right. This template here is not required. They just give it so parents who aren't sure, like, what's a transcript, what should be on it, they just give this template. You don't have to use this exact one. But if you're new to the high school scene, if you're new to transcripts, this is very helpful. Gisela mentioned in my bio, I do work for Homeschool Legal Defense Association. This presentation is not a HSLDA presentation. I'm here as Natalie Mack, LLC, but because I believe in HSLDA's mission, I'm going to always promote them regardless. And so what I'm saying in reference to transcripts is that we have excellent content on helping you create your high school transcript. Some of our other educational specialists just did an incredible transcript series that is available for members if you're a member or become a member. Also, we have a transcript service that even non-members can go to our hslda.org website, go to the store option in the top right, and you can go and find the transcript service, pay the fee, minimal fee, and then use the transcript service to create your transcript. So that's just a little bit of tips on how you can do this. So you see how this transcript looks, the student information and the school information, all of that has to be included because obviously the transcript has to talk about your student. It is all about your student, but you are the school. So they need to know how to contact you for official school business and how to contact the student for official student business, all right? And so the academic record here, I recommend doing an annual or what we call a yearly transcript. There are subject transcripts, and that's basically where we take those core course categories like English, math, science, social science, and foreign language. You put them into categories and you put all the classes you've done in those categories in a row. So that's a subject transcript, but for this process, I recommend the yearly transcript. And if you have, if you don't have access again, then I gave you some ways to actually get help with creating a transcript. And again, the dual enrollment, if your student is doing dual enrollment, then that definitely counts. And all of that can be put on here, including you see the courses starting with 9th grade, right? And the year, the grade, the credit. I recommend keeping things fairly lined up pretty well, meaning create a pattern for whatever subject, whatever core course begins first, second, third, kind of keep that pattern through 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th. It's easy to read for an admissions committee because that's important. You want to create one transcript, right? So you don't have several versions of your transcript floating around. So what does that mean? That means NCAA is going to have theirs, and then the colleges or Common App or wherever you submit it, they're going to have the same transcript submitted a different place. And so it needs to be the same, right? And you can put your dual enrollment, your grading scale, like I said, in your academic summary. So all of that's important to have on there. So we'll finally move past this transcript that's been up here for a while. Core course worksheet. What in the world is this? So this is why it's super important. The earlier you know in high school that your student even has an inkling, a discussion, a likelihood, a surety, whichever it fits, that they're going to play college or they want to go through that process, and you're going to be knocking on the NCAA Eligibility Center door, then you want to fill out these core course worksheets. We call them CCW for short. This again is included in the Eligibility Center Homeschool Toolkit. This is just a screenshot to tell you a little bit about to be prepared. So what in the world is this, you may ask? Okay, So for those 16 core courses, for each one, you need to fill out a core course worksheet. So we have this page and we have the second part, okay? That page, and then we have the second. So let's look at the first one, just so you know, it's 2 pages. And I also should tell you that these are for, there are 2 different categories of courses that NCAA looks at for homeschoolers. Traditional homeschool type courses, I call them mommy courses, classical conversations, co-op, and then non-traditional tends to be some of the online courses. So you're going to be filling out a core course worksheet for those mommy, CC type co-op classes. And then there's another worksheet pretty similar to this. It's a non-traditional core course worksheet you're going to fill out for the non-traditional. Okay, so think about this. You have a student that is saying, I want to play, and they've been saying since 9th grade, and you wait till 11th grade to fill out a core course worksheet for all of those courses. Wow. Right? Maybe you just realized, maybe your student just said, I want to play in college. That's a different story. You didn't know. But if you know, or they're talking about it, or there's a possibility, I recommend you fill these things out, because it's a lot to fill out at the last moment, and you can see what they ask for. So you put your course name. Of course, at that point, you'll have your NCAA ID, because you get that when you sign up for one of those 3 accounts I mentioned. You are going to choose the core course subject area that it goes in. You're going to talk about who the teacher was. Maybe there was a co-op teacher, prerequisites, if any, that had to be done before they accomplished this class, what texts were used, college preparatory texts that were used, even if they were just used as like a spine, right? Like, you know what I mean? You maybe didn't use them a whole lot, but they were part of your text for that particular course. They go there, everything goes there. And oh, sorry, I went too fast, sorry. And then, and then your core course description, right? So a lot of times if you're using a curriculum, most curriculums, they give you the description, and it's public knowledge, it's public information. They give it to you for you to use as a homeschool parent. So copy and paste it, right? If it's a course that you created or a co-op, then you do the course description, right? And then the next side of this is our the content, the goals, what the objectives were for the class. How did you assess? Were they quizzes? Were they tests? Did they have to do projects? Who decided that? How were the assessments designed, graded? Those type of things. Grade achieved, what was the credit that they got? Now, if your student takes a dual enrollment class, you don't do one for this. So any dual enrollment classes do not need a core course worksheet. They do need the transcript to be sent from the community college, right? Or the online dual enrollment program has to send the transcript directly to NCAA Eligibility Center, not to you, okay? So just so you know, that's a little bit there. I'm going to go ahead and talk a little bit as we've come to a close. And by the way, the non-traditional core course worksheet looks pretty similar, like I said. It's also in the toolkit. The one thing I also am thinking to mention, you will ideally, year by year, say about this in 8th grade, your students start to play in 9th, or you find out in 9th that they want to play, whenever it is, at the end of that academic high school year, you're submitting those core course worksheets, right? You've already gotten an account. That's the first thing you do no matter what. Just get the account. You get an NCAA ID for your student. But then every year you're doing those CCWs, right? Except for the dual enrollment classes. And you are updating your transcript, right? Those are things you have to do. So, but it doesn't necessarily you submit it to NCAA Eligibility Center. It doesn't mean that they are going to take a look at any of that submission and give you feedback until something happens. What is that? There's something that's called an IRL, institutional request list. I think I have that right. So what is that? Basically, a coach who is interested in your student potentially playing at their university on their team, contacts NCAA Eligibility Center and asks for them to put your student on the IRL. Until that happens, your paperwork sits at the NCAA Eligibility Center. It's going to be probably digital. It's going to sit there and it's kept for your student, but they have to get on the IRL. So know that you may not hear back because your student maybe is a freshman, right? But submit the paperwork. If you need help, there's plenty of resources out there. There's Facebook groups that that exist. So that's where I'll show you my QR. You can definitely reach out to me and I can help you on that process with a little bit more clarity. So finally, lessons learned as we come to a close. Follow the path. There is a path to play at the college level. There is a path to play. And if your student wants to play professionally, meaning after college or post-college, there's a path. And so look at universities and determine if you have a student who says, I'm going to want to play pro, then maybe you want to look at the universities that have somewhat of a proven track that their athletes get to play pro. Every Division I and Division II is not created equally. It's just not. So determine where you want to go next, right? Help your student. And a freshman may not know, but this is jot this down as a conversation to have when you get closer to figuring out where and how the student can know a little bit more about where they might feel good as a student, not just only as an athlete, but as a student. How can they find that out? By going to those college-bound camps. They get in front of the coaches, the assistant coaches, some of the team. They get to stay a week on campus, right? They get to check out the dining facility, which, isn't maybe the be all end all for college selection, but it's pretty high, right? Nobody wants to be at a school where the food is terrible, but you can survive, you'll eat. But you still, it's all the parts of the things that make the experience comfortable as well. So follow the path, adhere to that toolkit. Like I said, almost like if you're, if you are looking at the Bible and you're following that as an example, there's other examples I could use too. Just follow it, adhere to the toolkit. And you may have to pay for the exposure and training because I know from state to state, homeschoolers, have varying opportunities to play at a high school. And not all scouts are picking up high school athletes at a high school game. They're not all scouting them there. They're scouting them in some of these travel clubs, these competitive external to a high school opportunity, right? So sometimes we have to pay for the exposure and the training. And if you have an athlete who's playing in a homeschool soccer, homeschool sports league, soccer, I see the ball here, my daughter plays soccer, but a homeschool sports league, make sure they're getting the high level of competition that they need. I'm not saying that they can't. I'm not saying that homeschool leagues don't have high competition levels. Make sure that the one you're part of does, because the student has to be able to really play well to get the opportunity to get a scholarship. Realizing that, again, what did I say? You probably will be looking at a need to get merit money as well to merge them together. And that's a conversation you want to check with the school about how they merge the money as well, right? Okay, so I'm trying to think if there's anything else. Our daughter played for Liberty University. She was that's a Division I school. She did go to a few college-bound soccer camps and weeded out places. And we were over in Naples, Italy at the time, living over there. And we came back for a summer and she went to Liberty University's college-bound soccer camp and loved it. And the coach loved her and she got offered an opportunity. So, and this was post 11th grade, summer after 11th grade, before fall of 12th grade. So, the opportunities are out there. So I just, that if I can say anything is, please don't think that you've been homeschooling well. Homeschooling is fitting your family. It's what you feel called to do. And you have an athlete and you think that you need to pivot back to public school. In most cases, you don't. You just need to set up a plan and you need to know the process. So I am going to pull up my QR. This is my QR. So again, please feel free to reach out to me. I do help families on other journeys, not just NCAA. But if you have questions specifically about NCAA, definitely feel free to reach out to me. And I think that this is it. I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing and take questions.
Thank you so much for that, for the talk about everything. That's something I'm going through with my 13-year-old who is asking if she's going to be missing out if she continues to be homeschooled in high school. But the college bound camps, that's a good idea as well. And it gives you a little bit of time knowing that your daughter was in 11th grade when she started.
Yes,
I mean, she was
exactly.
playing sports prior to that though.
Yes, yes. So I always encourage families, like I said a couple of times, is the earlier you know, go ahead and get that account established and go ahead and start creating those core course worksheets because that's a lot to pull together at the end. And so we had started that process in the spring of her junior year. And so by the time the summer came around and she went to camp, we had our documentation and she was eligible. She was, meaning when I say eligible, she had been given her clearance and everything. So it really just depends. But yeah, so hopefully it helps. Hopefully this has
Yeah.
been helpful.
Does anybody have any questions for Miss Mack? I do wanna I put the link. Well, thank you for sharing a wealth of knowledge. Somebody said some people I know that are here that they're doing something else and are having their mics off.
Oh yeah, no worries.
I'm going to post again in the chat her YouTube talk. I highly encourage everybody to watch it.
Thank you.
And
Please.
yeah. Okay, and then we all have your QR code. That's a link to her link tree with all of everything. It has for military home a link to any events, your website, your talk as well. Okay.
Yes, a little bit of everything.
Thank you.
Yes, I appreciate you. I thank you so very, very much for inviting me. And again, I wish you all the best. I do need to depart. My husband is waiting for us to get on the road to New Jersey. So I hope that is okay. But it looks like it's been a great conference. And thank you, Gisela. You're incredible. You offer so much with passion and love. So I appreciate you.
Thank you. Same here, Natalie. We'll be in touch.
Okay. All right. Bye-bye, everyone.
Okay, we're running a little behind before we get to our next talk though. I'm gonna have Johnny for 2 minutes if you don't mind. We're Latinos homeschooling is again going to launch the Spanish classes that we were doing for our youth starting in October, and they're gonna run about 8 to 10 weeks. So Johnny, I'll give you 2 minutes to 1:15 over
Thank
that.
you so much. Muchas gracias. I'll be very quick. First question I wanted to check is if you have students, homeschoolers that speak Spanish already, or if they are of Latino background, pero no hablan español, they don't speak Spanish, or they're just not so great at it just yet. So if you could raise your hand or put it in the chat. I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen very quickly because I want to show you guys the class that we are going to be having very soon. And if you can see right here, can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So we're going to be launching Español at Your Fingertips, and it is a 10-week online aventura. So this class, I'm sharing you right here a couple of pictures of classes that I've done before. I've been teaching for a really long time, about 20 years, even though I look so young. It's been a really great journey for me. And I love sharing what I know and my experience with my students. So Español at Your Fingertips is going to be a 10-week journey into the vibrant world of Español. And it's perfect for beginners. And we will guide you through some basics of speaking, listening, reading, writing, and understanding the Spanish language and culture. And each week we explore a new theme. So that way you have a lot of new information. So that's 10 different themes and things that we're going to learn about. We're going to have games and we're going to practice speaking with classmates from all across the country. So it depends on who signs up. I have over 20 years of experience teaching. And I love making language learning fun. I am a native Spanish speaker. I was born in Cuba and I came here to the United States when I was 10. So I had to personally learn language, had to learn English myself. So that was really important to me to be able to share how to learn a language and speak a language in a really easy, simple, memorable way. So our classes are going to begin in October. It's going to go from October 2nd until the 11th, the week of the 27th. Before your Thanksgiving, we won't have class. And it'll be at 1:30 Eastern Standard Time. I'm in Florida, nice and sunny here. But for everybody else, I have the times here, so it's easy to know what time it's going to be. And it is best for ages 8 and up, and parents can sign up too. I know a lot of parents, they are of Hispanic background, Latino background, but they maybe don't have a language. They never really practiced it at home. And then the kids maybe don't know it either. But, ¿y por qué? Porque why are we going to take this class? Well, you're going to learn really fun, engaging lecciones, and we're going to learn español with creative games, songs, and interactive actividades. We're going to have cultural exploration, where we're going to discover the rich culture and lenguaje with fun facts and stories. And it's familia friendly. You guys can study together with the kids' parents, and you can all learn together with no experiencia necesaria. So it'll be a lot of fun. There's a cost for the class, and it's a deposit of $50. And then after that, you would pay $100 each month in October and November. So the total is $250. But you just start with a deposit and then we break it down so it's not, a big chunk of money right away. And this is a sample from the previous class we did. That was only a 5-week class, but in 5 weeks, check out everything that we learned. So in 5 weeks, this is all the stuff that we went over. We did vowels and letters because it's super important to learn how to read. After that, you have free reign to explore a lot of stuff. Materials for class, vocab, days of the week, countries where they speak Spanish, vocabulary about the map and the world, vocabulary for traveling. We learned about Puerto Rico. I love teaching about Puerto Rico because it's one of the places we can easily visit. Don't need a passport and just go on the weekend. We learned about clothes, vocabulary, colors, vocabulary for shopping, things to say what you like, what you need, what you want, what you have. We talked about nouns and adjectives, months of the year, plane and ticket. And if you notice, all of this is very thematic. So the way that I teach it is as if we're going on a trip. So we make it like really exciting and fun for the kids. So that they're looking forward to come to class. So I'm quickly going to scroll through this so you can see a bunch of the stuff that we did in class. It's super helpful. The kids loved it. We all learned a lot about each other, and it's a great way to explore our language, our culture, and get to talk a little bit more. This one was like super cool. They had to shop and they had to tell me in Espanol what they wanted to buy. They have an ID, they have a passport. So it's a lot of fun. If you guys are interested, I'm gonna put the flyer in the chat. Let me see how I can get out of here because now I don't know how to get out of here. And that's my website. And the next adventure is just a click away.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much.
I
My-
hope you guys will join.
Thank you. I'm gonna move along because I want to honor Dr. Matthew Summermill's time. I know she's been waiting patiently. So yes, please, the link is, she'll put it in the chat. And I'm also going to put a landing page on our website as well. So if you want to go on there, and a link on our Instagram profile page. Okay, our next talk, and thank you again, Johnny, for joining us. You're welcome to stay and enjoy the rest of the talks. We're going to have actually a panel discussion in less than an hour as well. But the next person I want to introduce is she is representing HSLDA. If some of you aren't familiar with HSLDA, because I know there's a lot of new homeschoolers around, and some parents that ask me about laws in their particular state, I do direct them to this website because I'm also a member, and it's been pretty helpful for me to get discounts on a lot of places by becoming a member. And also my daughter, both of them needed transcripts. Not unlike what Natalie was talking about, they weren't going to college. They needed them to be part of an academy during this past summer, both of them in different, different cases, and they needed to know what their GPA was, what they were learning until this point. So it comes in really good use. And also there's a blog in the website about a lot of different stories on why we're homeschooling, like just like Natalie said again. She can tell you what worked for her family, but the beauty of homeschooling is what worked for my family or her family, or even or Dr. Rochelle's family, is not necessarily going to work for our family. That's the beauty of it. But it is helpful to get a lot of everybody. I think a lot of us are experts in one field and something that we really focus on, and this is something that we bring to the table and we share with other homeschooling parents. So I'm going to introduce Dr. Rochelle Matthews Somerville, who has an MS in special education with a focus on autism, Asperger's syndrome, and behavioral disorders, and a doctorate in psychological and cultural studies with concentration in learners with severe and communication disorders. So she has over 20 years of clinical experience serving youth and their families in the field of early childhood and special education, and has served as a university professor, county-wide autism specialist, a K through 12 resource teacher, education consultant, both private and public education arenas. She's also passionate about teaching and loves speaking at local conferences and local school districts. So over the past 10 years, Dr. Rochelle has shared her gifts with the homeschool community as she served as a program director, community instructor, assessment liaison, and she genuinely enjoys providing encouragement and support to other homeschooling families in every way possible. Also, she joined the HSLDA, the Homeschool Legal Defense Association, as a special needs education consultant in January 2019. So she's been there for 5 years. And she has 6 children of her own, 5 boys and 1 girl, and has been homeschooling for 11 years. And she lives in Charles County in Maryland. So welcome, Dr. Rochelle Matthews Somerville. And thank you for being
Much.
patient.
Oh, absolutely. That last talk was completely enjoyable, so I really appreciated it. And I appreciate the invite here because like you said, I truly am passionate. So I'm going to share my screen here. I truly am passionate about helping homeschoolers. Let's see. Let me try this again. I have double screens here. And so sometimes, sorry about that. Okay, there we go. Okay. Okay. So I appreciate the invite here just to share a little bit about the journey for our homeschooling neurodivergent students. I won't talk too much about myself because you did an amazing job kind of highlighting my journey here, but I want to introduce my family a little bit. This is what I call my party of 8, is what I call us. That's my husband there on the right-hand side, and my 6 beautiful children, Jaden, Jeremy, Joshua, Jalen, Jackson, and Jordan. As you see, we like the J's. I have 3 kiddos with what I call hidden disabilities, and I call them hidden because you'll never know what they are, because when you talk and engage them, you'll never know which one has a disability. But through the years, we have noticed certain things, and they usually don't pop up till pre-adolescent years, but you notice some idiosyncrasies if you spend some time with them. But they are wonderful kids. But we've tried some different things. Some of them have had speech throughout the years, and then others have had lots and lots of executive functioning issues where we've had to put some organizational things in place, but lots of things that would not match the traditional public school very well. They would either be, given lots of consequences or things like that. And so we've done a lot. So you'll hear me tell a lot of stories about the different out of the box kind of things that we've tried with my kids that just wouldn't, the public school system and the rigid ways that they do things really, really, really wouldn't work. And so this kind of led me to kind of decide to homeschool. And so, okay, there's my husband. He's very much an introvert to himself. He's a businessman, and I am the extrovert for the family. So I'm the organizer, but I'm everywhere. I wear many hats. As it was announced, I have been at HSLDA for about 5 years, and before that, I was at the university. And so I took everything that I knew and I have brought it to the homeschool world. And so even at HSLDA in my own company, I support the community, basically working to help homeschool families, show them that you can homeschool neurodivergent students at home just as well as the public school. And I've been so blessed by doing that in my career. And a lot of people think that homeschooling is a new thing, I guess, since the pandemic, because all of these statistics and things came out about the uptake in homeschooling, especially for minority families. But I particularly, and it hasn't been, I think it's old bio, it hasn't been 11 years. I've been homeschooling for 18 years. And so, but homeschooling is not a new fad. As you can see, homeschooling has been existed since like about the 1970s, when John Holt and Dorothy, I think it's John Holt and Dorothy and Raymond Moore, basically said that homeschooling was a viable option for families. And so currently there are between about 3.7 and 5 million families that homeschool. And of that number, there are probably about 38% of those families who homeschool who have neurodivergent children. Now, that's probably an underestimation because a lot of times when you choose to homeschool your child with a disability, we don't have to use services from the public school system. And so those are probably the numbers of children who are receiving services from the public school system. But as you can see, there are a lot of students. So 38% is approximately 950,000 students. That's a lot. So this is not new. And of that number, there are approximately 41% who are non-white. So we are out there, right? We're out there. And so I don't want you to feel like you are alone at all. And so when we're talking about neurodivergence, we're talking about encompassing all the range of disorders that affect the ability to think and learn and process information, right? It could be a sensory disability. It could be the autism spectrum disorder, dyslexia, dysgraphia, dyscalculia, any kind of health-related disorders, anywhere in attention disorders, ADHD, ADD, any intellectual disorders. So this is not all encompassing, but this is to kind of give you a sense of what type of neurodivergence or examples of neurodivergence I'm talking about. But basically, the idea of neurodivergence highlights the conditions that there are differences that exist, not necessarily function on the fact that there are deficits. It's really differences in brain functions. And so I want to make that very, very clear. Each one of these kids, each one of these teens or young adults has many unique strengths and challenges that homeschooling actually highlights, which is very, very different than what your traditional public school does. So before we even go any further, I want to first debunk some of the very prominent myths that I hear all the time when it comes to homeschooling children, neurodivergent children specifically. A lot of people tend to come to me and say, well, I can't homeschool my child with a disability because I'm not an expert, right? Well, I am here first and foremost to tell you that you do not have to be an expert with a professional background to homeschool your child. But also, let me go a step further to say that I believe that you are the expert as the parent. You come with a level of expertise that not even I, as the professional, come with, right? I want you to think back to the pediatrician when your child was, if your child has a diagnosis, when your child was diagnosed, right? I always tell people, think about how your child got the diagnosis. When you first took your child to the pediatrician, I remember taking my kids to the pediatrician and you fill out that screener. You fill out that screener when they're young, and they ask tons and tons of questions. Writing, fine motor, all the type of questions. And then after they've asked you tons of questions, then they turn around and they give you a diagnosis. But without you giving them the information as the expert of your child, they can't come to the diagnosis, right? And so you have to kind of ask yourself, then who's actually the expert of your child? It's actually you. But for some reason, socially, in society, we are convinced that because they went to school, they are the expert. Well, they're the book experts of the knowledge of different areas. So they may be a doctor because they've gone to school for this particular trade, or you may be a doctor of. I am particularly a doctor in the field of education, but I'm not the specialist, or I'm not the professional expert of your particular child. That is you. And so I want to debunk this myth that you have to be an expert to homeschool. The second one I always hear is that homeschool cannot meet or won't meet the needs of your child because of their divergence. Well, that's not true either, because who will meet the needs of your child better than a parent? Well, if you know your child best, then you can meet their needs best, right? It takes me about anytime I meet a new child, if a parent brings a child to me, it's a learning curve. Like, it takes time. It may take me months to actually learn the ins and outs. I need to learn and watch the patterns of a child. If a child has a tantrum, I need to work with that child for a very long time in order to really, really be able to read, well, why is this child falling out every time I present something to them? Where the parent can stand from the window and say, oh, it's because you presented, this or that, or it's because you said this or that, and that's the trigger word. Well, the expert just gave me information. So again, the fact that you as a parent cannot meet their particular needs, that's definitely a myth. And then I don't have resources. Well, we're going to talk about this a lot more, but you can homeschool with almost nothing. You do not have to have a lot of resources. You do not have to have a lot of money. There are curriculum that are free. There are actually curriculum that people homeschool with a dime. Oops, I'm sorry, I went backwards. So let's get to the good part, the fun part, all right? So what is the good part? Why homeschool? What is so great about homeschooling, okay? So the flexibility, of course, and I'm sure everyone has heard about the flexibility of homeschooling. The flexibility for you to create these programs that work not only for your child, but for your family, okay? So how many times have you been inconvenienced by somebody having you do something at a time, or asking you to do something at a time that doesn't work for your family, or being sent home something that you don't understand, but now you have to support your child to do it, right? But when you homeschool, that's not an option, right? You have the freedom from distractions. You can take breaks whenever you need, if that's what your child needs. You can switch and change curriculum. If it's not working, change it, right? You don't have to keep pushing and pushing and pushing until your child has a breakdown. No, you just change it. And so naturally, homeschooling brings families this freedom. It takes the load off. When your child is coming home upset, take the load off, because now you're going to do what works for your child. You can individualize the instruction. You can focus on your child's strengths. A lot of times when you have children with disabilities, The obvious is what they have their weaknesses in. It's obvious, right? What they're struggling in. If it's something physical, you see it. If they can't do math or they can't do something, it's really obvious to see. But sometimes to highlight what they do well, sometimes takes work, right? But guess what? When you bring them home, that's not going to be difficult because I'm going to find it and I'm going to capitalize it. And that's the beauty of homeschooling, that flexibility. Sometimes students, I hear families say all the time, well, my kid can only sit for 15 minutes. And I say, that's great. That's all we need. Because you know what? 15 minutes, sit, go do something. Come back, sit for 15 minutes. Come back, sit for 15 minutes. You do not have to sit at the table. In fact, you don't ever have to sit at the table. When my son was in kindergarten, I'm going to tell you, I learned that we had to homeschool under the table. I mean, I forced him for a while because I traditionally thought that the only learning that happens is at a table, sitting in a chair, when you look a certain way. You have to look the part when you learn. And he would focus so much on looking the part that he just couldn't learn. And so finally, he was under the table one day and I just got frustrated with him. And I was like, you're not paying attention. Come back up here. And so he just got frustrated. He started crying and he said, Mom, I'm listening. And I said, no, you're not. And I said something to him about, well, how do you spell such and such? I'm talking about the word. And he said, and he spelled it. And I kind of paused for a second and I looked and I gave him another one and he said it. And I realized that he was listening. And so guess what? I didn't move him, but I crawled under the table and under the table, I homeschooled the rest of kindergarten. Fast forward, he is now a rising senior at the University of Maryland, and he's majoring in mechanical engineering. And he is just fine, right? And so he is one of my kids. He is one of my neurodivergent kids. He has ADHD, lots of executive functioning issues, but we made it work. There were days that we were under the table. Fast forward, even in high school, his programs still look very, very different than anybody else's. We had to go back a couple subjects. When we got to the end of algebra, we had to go all the way back because he looked at me and said, Mom, I didn't learn anything. And I said, okay, well, that's not going to work. And it was okay, because you know what? We homeschooled and we finished right where we needed to. And he, again, is about to graduate with a mechanical engineering degree. And so the flexibility of homeschooling is amazing. I can't express it enough. But of course, people homeschool for different reasons. And so the first thing you have to do is figure out what's your why. You know, whether it's for religious reasons, whether you're unsatisfied with the current options, whether it's for academics. Some people feel like their kids are not challenged enough. A lot of times when you have a neurotypical child, people have very, very low expectations for your child. And so maybe you just want to increase those expectations. Or maybe they're just too high and your child is frustrated. Sometimes kids are bullied, or sometimes they're not having good social opportunities and you want something different. And so, or maybe it's other reasons, but whatever it is, two things. The strongest predictor of academic achievement is one, parent involvement, and two, one-on-one learning. And when you homeschool, guess what? You have the best of both worlds. So some of the benefits of homeschooling neurodivergent children are what we talked about: personalized learning. You can personalize that learning to whatever your child needs. The pacing, you know what? You can slow down, you can speed up, you can repeat a chapter, you can skip a chapter if you have an accelerated learning. You can pace it however you want. And then the consistency in programming. Sometimes I've heard families say, you know, if like, for example, let's say you are having a baby and all of a sudden this kind of throws everything out of the water and your routines are completely off. For some people, this is kind of a deal breaker and their cycles and their routines are broken. But guess what? When we homeschool, we are not punching a clock. So guess what? That's just what we do as a family. We switch gears. You can homeschool in the evening. Let's say you have a one income and your husband or your husband goes out and works during the day. You can homeschool at night. I tell this story all the time. When I worked full time up until number 5, believe it or not. And so during the day, when my oldest was in kindergarten, I worked full time at the university, and I would come home at 5. We would eat dinner, and then after dinner, I would homeschool my kindergartner. Now, most people are like, "You made him work at night?" I didn't make him work at night. He didn't know anything different. He played during the day. Our homeschool was in the evening. He was fine. So we worked for a little bit, and it was play. We played. It was very light. He enjoyed it. He got to play and learn in the evening. That was our schedule. And sometimes we carried over to the weekend. You make your schedule your own. You move at your own pace. And it was beautiful. We worked on his strengths, whatever he did. So it wasn't painful because he got to do whatever was his strength. And in the picture here are my twins, right? And when they were born, I thought, oh man, this is good, because they were 4 and 5. And so I was already a little overwhelmed, but they were 4 and 5. And I thought this is going to be great, 2 for 1, so it's going to be like having one more, not two. But I found out that they were like night and day, so it didn't really work that well. But in theory, you see on the table there, you have the one kid who was a very kinesthetic learner. He had to touch everything, and the other one was like, I'm not crafting. That's not my thing. He wanted to write out everything. So, but that's okay, because guess what? Same age, same grade, same lesson. One constructed everything, and then one wrote everything. And it was still beautiful because I got to do that. I got to create flexible schedules. And today they are 15 and they are still very, very different. And so our learning still looks very, very different. And so why is homeschooling a great option if you have a neurodivergent learner? One, because you still have control over that learning environment. So you get to make it your own. Two, you get to customize that curriculum. So if you have something specific that you need to work on, you can do that. Now, this is beautiful for anybody, specifically for you who has a rich culture. So for me, as an African-American woman, we have always put African-American history in our homeschool, right? My kids have done it since they were kindergarten. I have lots and lots of families that I've worked with from Latina backgrounds that have asked me, well, what do I do? Do I only have to homeschool in English? Because of course, in the state of California, I understand that you have to homeschool in English. Does that mean that you cannot homeschool in your native language? My answer to that is absolutely no. That's not what that means. It means that you have to homeschool in English. Does that mean you can't homeschool in your native language? No, that means that you can do both, right? But that doesn't mean that you can that doesn't mean that you have to get rid of your culture. You can still embed your culture as part of your homeschool. So the requirements are one thing, and then you embed the rest into your homeschool, because that's what the flexibility of homeschool does. So absolutely maintain your culture and love on it, and make sure that your kids grow up in the culture that you want. Prioritizing life skills and independence. That's another important one, because a lot of times our neurodivergent kids need to be systematically taught these life skills. And what do I mean by life skills? How about putting on the appropriate clothes for the weather? My kiddo is still at 15. It could be snowing outside, wants to put on boots and shorts. And I'm like, oh, but he'll put on a jacket. And I'm like, no, honey. Tank top, because the muscles are starting to come out, but he wants to look good and show off his muscles, but it's still 50 degrees. And I'm like, no. So wearing appropriate clothes. How about taking out the trash when you see it by the door, or filling the dishwasher, making your own food, cleaning up after yourself. Those life skills that are important for independence. So these are things that you can absolutely put into your curriculum or part of your curriculum. So for a child with a disability or neurodivergence, life skills can be incorporated as a part of the curriculum. It does not have to be separate. And so you create the curriculum. There are certain things that are required, but you also create part of that. You create part of that curriculum yourself. So how in the world do you get started if you're interested? Okay, so the first thing, I love to allude to HSLDA, because on HSLDA's website, we have all the legal requirements and the homeschool laws right there for you. So for anybody who's interested, you just go right there to HSLDA's website, and they have these states. And right there, you can click on it and you can see what your homeschool laws are and what you're eligible for right there as a homeschooler. And then they have a section for if you have a child with a disability. If there are any provisions, because some states give provisions for students if they have a disability. And so that's important too. Are you allowed any provisions for having a child with a disability? Provisions meaning, for example, sometimes you are allowed to give alternative tests, or you're allowed to give reports as opposed to if you have a child who simply cannot take tests at the end of the year. Some states will allow you to give will give a report in lieu of a test. And so right there on the website, you will see some of those provisions. And so those are really important. Also, the forms that need to be submitted are right there on the website. So that's always your first step. You have to know what your legal requirements are in order to homeschool. So that's your first step. And then creating that homeschool plan. Okay, so this is always a tricky one because you have so much flexibility. And this is in terms of your routine, your academics, your therapies, your enrichment activities. And what I always say is, before you jump the gun, if you are just pulling your child out or you are just getting started, your priority is just learning your child, right? You want to slow down and just learn who your child is, not your child from a mother-child perspective or a father-child perspective, but just learning your child as a learner, okay? Because they're almost two different people. And I could go on forever about that. So my kids were wonderful. They were so sweet. They were just the apple of my eye until I became their teacher. And then that was a whole nother child I had to experience, right? Because I had to learn that as their teacher, they had to respect me as the authority, which was very different from mom, right? As mom, I could give them boundaries on one level, but as their teacher, they had to understand that when I gave them an instruction, they actually had to do it, you know? Or I also had to learn, I had to learn them in the sense of when I presented content or presented information to them, were they the kind of learner where I had to repeat it? I'm going to use my twins again as an example. So one of them, they need to hear information over and over again. They need it repeated. And so even today, he benefits from having information repeated and seeing it so that he can copy it and he's good. The other one, if I repeat it twice, he has checked out on me, right? I had to learn that about them as learners. And so at this point, when I work with them, I try to separate them because I'm either losing one or I'm stressing out the other, right? But that's getting to know my kid as a learner, right? And so those are two different things. And so I say, if you are just starting out, make sure that you take time to get to know your child as a learner. And sometimes it means just presenting things to them and then seeing, trying different things, but not for the purpose of kind of marking out learning yet, but just for the purpose of kind of getting to know them as a learner. You want to give tasks. And sometimes if you're just pulling your child out and you're just starting to homeschool, you don't really know where they are. And that's okay, right? Take some time to figure out where they are academically, because a lot of times what they were doing in school may not be exactly where they're going to be when they get home. The other thing too is not panic, right? Because a lot of times families say, well, my kid is nowhere near grade level. And I tell them, you know what, don't panic, because the thing is that when you put in front of your child exactly the materials that work and match their grade level and match their learning style, they're going to flourish, right? Because a lot of times what happens is that we force kids into a curriculum that doesn't match or work for them when they're in traditional school systems. And we keep pushing and pushing and pushing. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't matter. It's on the kid. But when we homeschool, we get to move and flex and we get to make it work. And we put in modifications and we keep changing and changing until we find out what works. And so then when we find out what works, then all of a sudden you start to see the growth and the learning. And you are amazed at what your child knows. But it's really not something different than what was already happening. It's just that nothing was ever presented to them in a way that they could receive it and understand it and then learn it and let you know that they were understanding it. So you will be surprised what happens when you start to homeschool your own child or teach your own child in a way that they understand and learn and can share information back with you. Now, here is the fun part, which is finding curriculum and resources. And I say the fun part because I tell people finding curriculum is a mixed blessing. Some people like to go and fill out that intent, I want to homeschool, and then they're like, okay, I need a curriculum. And I caution you from doing that because it's a mixed blessing. Here's your next mixed blessing. The mixed blessing is this, is that there are 1,000 curriculums That's the good news. And the bad news is there are 1,000 curriculums, okay? And so it's a double-edged sword, right? Because it's exciting that you have that many choices, but when you really go to choose, it's not exciting at all. It's like, where do I start, right? There are all-in-one programs, there are online programs, there are a la carte programs where you can buy one at a time, you can buy it as a set, you can buy all the same grade level, you can buy resources in Spanish, you can buy bilingual where they're in 2 different languages. I could go on and on and on. And then that's just the curriculum. But now let's talk about the price range, right? And especially if you have a learner with a disability, some of those can get really pricey. If you've got a child with dyslexia, some of those curriculum can get really pricey. But at the same time, there are also free curriculum that you can access. And what I say is, if you are just starting out, regardless of whether your child is on grade level, below grade level, or whatever, I recommend to people all the time, do not start at the high end. I mean, even if you know that you are completely committed to homeschooling, do not go out and buy yourself a $5,000 curriculum, because you don't know if that curriculum is going to work for your child. So I always recommend learn your child first with some of the free curriculums. There are a lot of free curriculums, and there's some that are really nominal. You can find a really nominal curriculum that you could try out. If you're interested in an online curriculum, there are really, really nominal ones that you could try. Because you might find out, okay, my kid can't even sit long enough to access this curriculum. So it may be a wonderful curriculum, but we have to take into account that our kids are all unique. They come with all kinds of things. They may be interested, they may not. They may be so into the technology that they can't really even access the knowledge that's being shared on the curriculum, that we thought was great. And so you have to be careful not to overindulge or get too excited about the idea of presenting the curriculum that matches. What I'm going to tell you is that if you are committed to homeschooling, you will find what works for your child. I have never met a family who has not eventually found what works. Sometimes it can be frustrating because it's going to take going through a couple things to find your rhythm. I always say find a rhythm, because it's not just the curriculum. It's going to be the curriculum matched with the schedule, matched with the child's learning style or preferences. And then let's take into account your style too. Because if you find a curriculum, but you have to be heavily involved, and guess what? You have 4 little ones, that's not going to work. So you also have to think about you in your curriculum. If you have a lot of little ones, I have 6 kids, and I had a lot of little ones at the same time. I had to take that into account when I bought a curriculum. Do the same thing. So think about the curriculum you're going to buy, and don't think about the individual child if you have multiple kids at the same time, right? So if you have one child, that's very different than having multiple kids. And so there's a lot to think about. And so I would say just don't go out and just buy the first curriculum because you have a friend and they're homeschooling extremely well and it's going great, because that never ever works. So be careful with that one. Also, think about the fact that along with the curriculum, there's tons and tons of lots of resources that are outside of the curriculum that you can utilize. You have community support. There are tutoring opportunities. You don't have to do it all. You absolutely do not have to do it all. The therapy is a part of your school day. And so don't think that if your child is receiving therapies, that you do therapy for 2 or 3 hours and then you have to go do whatever. Nope, this is all part of the plan. So all of it is incorporated into your school day. Now, I know that all of this I have made sound so wonderful, but I would not be honest if I did not say that there are challenges and frustrations that come with homeschooling. Kind of like I always equate it to, when you have that baby and you just fall in love in the hospital. The nurses come. I remember when I had the twins, I distinctly remember the nurses came every day and they took my babies out. They came and they changed their diapers. They gave them baths. They brought them back smelling like just sweetness. When it was time to feed them, I fed them, and they would come and help me wrap them back up and they would lay them down. And when they got fussy, they would take them and they would bathe them, and I would get some rest. And then on day 3, they just handed them to me. And I was so amazed, and I was feeling so blessed. And the whole ride home, they screamed. And we got home and they screamed. And I'm going to say, for the entire first year, neither one of them slept in their beds. And I thought to myself, well, this was a setup. But, I guess we kept them. We didn't give them back. They're still with me. But this is just part of life, right? And so there are frustrations to homeschooling, but I want to normalize that feeling, right? That you're going to feel a lack of confidence, just like you did when you brought them home. Like, I felt like I had things locked down. I felt like I was real confident that I knew what I was doing. They never cried in the hospital, right? I nursed them. I did well. I rocked them. They stopped crying. I was feeling good. And then I took them home, and I felt like I don't know what happened. I would rock them, do the same thing, and they just wouldn't stop crying, right? And so I started to wonder, well, do I know what I'm doing? Can I do this? There's 2 of them, right? Maybe I should only had 1, But you feel that sense of, or that lack of confidence, and then fatigue sets in, right? And then sometimes you feel, well, where is my spouse? Like, where is he? And you remember, oh, well, he's the one working. He's got to go to work. And you're like, well, why does he have to work? So you start to think crazy things when you're a little tired, and then sometimes some of us are juggling work and homeschool, and they're really only 24 hours in the day. And then sometimes there's limited resources. And so sometimes our unrealistic expectations kind of takes over. And so we have to be careful that sometimes this is what sets in with the challenges of homeschooling. But I'm going to say that there are ways of overcoming all of these challenges, right? You find your village. Find that village. Everyone has a village, right? You just have to find that village. Ask for the help that you need. I had to learn that the hard way, that people always said, well, I'm always here. You just ask for what you need. So ask for the support you need. And remember to celebrate those small wins. There are things that your kids will do. And sometimes we forget that the progress sometimes is really small, but you have to celebrate those small wins. And we have to remember us when we are planning for our kids. Remember to celebrate us, and remember to take care of us. If you need to, before you wake up the kids for your homeschool day, if you need to go and make your coffee and just get 15 minutes to yourself, put yourself in the schedule, right? That's how you take care of us, and you keep going, one foot in front of the other. The other thing too is that before you start homeschooling, ask yourself, why am I homeschooling? Why am I choosing to do this? And if you've been homeschooling for a while, and you're stuck, and you've got a teenager, and you're going to high school, and you're like, okay, I'm not sure I can do this high school thing. Ask yourself, why did you begin the journey? Why did you even start it? Because your why will sustain you even through high school. Because your why you're still homeschooling through high school is probably the same reason why you started in the beginning. And remember, the community is still there, right? You don't need a community of 1,000 people to feel confident that you're doing the right thing. You just need people who understand your journey. And a lot of times those are people right there in your community. You don't need a lot of people, but you do need people to support you, to say, yeah, I get it. So the wonderful thing about HSLDA is that we have tons and tons of resources, and we are steadily working on them. And we have 2 sides of our website, which is super exciting. We are steadily building, and we do have, this is always a question when I work with my Latino families, do we have the resources in Spanish? And I can confidently say, yes, we do. There are resources that we have in Spanish. We have a whole Spanish side. And so rest assured, if you join HSLDA, the resources will be in Spanish. Now, I will say that there are a lot more resources that are on the special needs side, but you will be able to flip back and forth, and you will be able to get what you need from the website. Like, for example, at this point, we are slowly updating both sides to kind of match each other. Like on the Spanish side, there are more up-to-date resources related to high school than there are on the special needs side. And so, and vice versa. If you have a younger child, there are more resources on the special needs side for younger children. And so we are slowly working on updating both sides, but rest assured that you will have the resources you need if you join HSLDA. The wonderful thing I'm going to say, the wonderful thing is that the webinars and the workshops are on both sides in both English and in Spanish. And they cover all areas. So if you're looking for workshops, or if you a specific topic, like or if you have an elementary all the way through high school and you're looking for a specific topic, you can find those workshops and webinars in both English and in Spanish. And so I'm going to say that is the biggest asset that we bring to HSLDA as a member. Educational resources, again, on the page, they're both in English and Spanish. We have a transcript service. So if you have an older student and you're at the high school level, we do have a transcript service. We have transcript templates if you are ready to create a transcript for your child for one reason or another. If you have a student with special needs and you are ready to pull your child out and you want to create a plan, we have what's called an SEP, or student education plan, which is equivalent to the IEP, but it's designed for homeschoolers. And it holds as much weight as the IEP when you do things like, for example, let's say you have an older student and you need accommodations for one of the standardized tests. You can submit the SEP and it holds just as much weight as the IEP or the 504 plan. And of course, that was the special needs website. And then the curricular options are listed in Spanish and English on both sides. And so if you're looking for curriculum, and you can find that in both English and Spanish. So I'm a quote person. I'm always looking for inspiration. And this is one of the ones that I love. And this quote: believe in yourself and in the power of your child's unique potential, because with the right support, you are not just teaching lessons, you're crafting a path to a future where your child can thrive, learn, and shine. The journey may be challenging, but every step forward is a victory. And I love this because it emphasizes the power of parents confidently homeschooling their neurodivergent children, because with the right tools, resources, and mindset, you absolutely can homeschool your child all the way from the beginning through high school. And so I truly, truly, truly appreciate even being invited to the platform to even share. Truly, you can see that this is my passion. I've been doing it for over 18 years, and I feel like this is where I'll be for the rest of my life, because I truly, truly believe that everybody, even if they choose not to homeschool, should at least feel equipped to homeschool. And so hopefully I have left you all with that little nugget that you absolutely can homeschool. And I hope that you feel a little bit more equipped if you didn't feel when you started. And if you want more information about HSLDA, there's a QR code here that you can kind of take a picture of, and it'll link you to the website.
I think you made a lot of us feel so much better about ourselves.
Good.
Yeah, we all have those days where we don't feel we've done enough, or, even my husband, if we have like a trip to the museum and we come home, he's like, well, are you going to do more are you going to do schoolwork with him? Like, we already did.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, but that's his way of seeing things. Like, if it's not school unless he's getting accustomed to that. If you're not on the table working on lessons. Yeah. Oh, somebody has a question.
Sure.
I actually wanted to piggyback on like what you were saying. I've been a classroom teacher for over 20 years, and this happens to all of us. So if you're homeschooling, you are now the teacher. And it happens to all of us. There are some days that we have plans and they don't go as planned, and we have to change things. And you know what? Sometimes we have to just take the day off and do something relaxing and fun, and just defrost our brain from everything that's been happening, and then we get back on it, because you're human, so don't forget that you're human and not every day is going to go as planned. But then you take a moment, regroup, and get back on it. So thank you so much for sharing and your enthusiasm. I really enjoyed your presentation.
Thank you. And I love that. I love that. I tell people all the time, I say, homeschooling is wonderful, but our whole job is to preserve the relationship. And so at the end of homeschooling, if there are things that are happening, your job is to preserve the relationship. And so if you're button heads and you're button heads, put it down, go get ice cream, pick it up tomorrow.
Yeah, because you have a very unique relationship. It is your kid and you are the teacher. So they sometimes find this like very fluid, and they don't know where the line stops from mommy and teacher.
Yes, that's true. And that's hard. It has to be hard from their perspective. So I agree. Thank you.
Yeah. I take my kid with me to classes and I'm like, oh my God, this is so embarrassing. He like rolls up in yoga mats and stuff, and I'm like, what are you doing? I am
And
a
then
teacher now.
you have other people say, "Oh, your kid is so well behaved." I'm like, "Oh,
Yeah, I know. So thank you so much for sharing.
absolutely.
Thank you.
You're welcome." And thank you for inviting me. This is wonderful.
Yes, it's a pleasure. Thank you. Does anybody else have any questions for her? Okay, before we move on?
Thank you.
Thank you. So, we're gonna move along. We a little bit behind. The next session, it's a half hour. It's a very short panel discussion on moms who already graduated their children from high school and their experience. And I was gonna say Dr. Rochelle is welcome to stay and listen to the rest of our talk. So Sarah B's here. She's gonna be moderating the panel. We have Debbie, Ginger, Brenda, and Cindy here. I'll write their names in the chat. Brenda, Ginger, Debbie, and Cindy. And I'm gonna try to pin you guys. So that way you can know. Pin. A pin. A pin. Okay, there, I pinned you guys. Do you want to be pinned, Sarah? Should I pin you? Let me pin you.
Thank
Okay.
you, Gisela. Can everyone hear me? Great. So the first thing I'd like to do is start the panel by asking if you could all take turns telling us your name, where you're from, how many homeschool students you have, and how long you've been homeschooling.
I'll start. So can y'all hear me?
Yes.
Yes, okay. My name's Debbie Garza. I am from Houston, Texas. I have two boys, and I have been homeschooling for 8 years.
I'll go next. My name is Ginger Pacheco, and we live a little east of Stockton, California. I've been homeschooling this is our 14th year. I have 4 children.
I'll go next. My name is Belinda. I have 2 daughters, 12 and 8, and I've been homeschooling the whole time.
I'm Cindy Castro from Southern California. I have one son. We homeschooled for 12 years and he's graduated.
Well, thank you all for that. I would like to ask you another question, which is what made you decide to homeschool?
I'd like to share. I don't know if you can hear me. Can you hear me? Hi, ladies. I'm so excited to see your faces. So excited to be here. So I was trying to figure out my settings there for a minute, and I was like, I did not respond. Just so we have been homeschooling from the very beginning. I have three beautiful girls, 11, 14, and soon to be 19. So that just means that I have one senior that just finished this year. I've said this before at the conferences, but really the main reason why we started homeschooling, aside from the fact that my spouse was like, hey, you're a classroom teacher and really like pretty well versed in how to do this. Why wouldn't you just do this for our kid? And just like the lady prior to this, I was also working full time. I worked full time until my oldest child was in the third grade. And then after that, I was working part time. And I haven't stopped since. And so in that, I've had, had all these things. But what really made us decide to homeschool was me working in public school, because that's it. That's all it took. Having my children work, knowing that our neighborhood school wasn't even that bad. I worked at the neighborhood school. So it wasn't even a terrible school. Actually, it was wonderful. The problem is that at that time, politically, there were some laws in place that required that children, all of the children, be pretty much forced to be in this English language immersion program. And there was only one mainstream classroom for monolinguals, like my daughter. And I was like, okay, I mean, we had the reverse problem, right? The reverse problem was this little brown girl couldn't speak Spanish, right? And that's so funny. And we're working on it, by the way. She understands everything we say now. But it really started off that way, because what I found out looking at that classroom, I was scared, because it was like 8 kids and they had all the, I can say it here because it's Latinos homeschooling, all the non-brown children with all of the issues that probably should have been in self-contained classrooms, in other areas, but they were tough children. How do I know that? Because I was there, right? And so, yeah, we started off because our law was fairly racist, and my child was not going to be like, her needs would not be met in that. So I don't know. I just say that mine was a legal struggle. And then finally it just happened to where we got further along and kept saying eighth, oh, we'll do it till 8th grade. Oh, we'll do it till 9th grade. And we're doing it to 12th grade. And we did. And I have no plans on stopping. That's just me.
I'll go next. Similar to Brenda, not necessarily a legal issue, but my son did go up to 5th grade, and he was bullied in school. And so we went through all the protocols that the district had in place. And just my husband and I were not satisfied with how the district handled, more or less punishing him, wanting to remove him from the class instead of giving the proper consequences to the kids that were bullying him. And so we were like, if this happened in a self-contained class in elementary, like there's no way I'm gonna send my baby to middle school where they're off on their own, and the locker room and all the things. And so it was more of a safety. But I also taught high school, and so I knew how high school was, especially with his self-esteem already, broken. And I was like, no, my baby is not going to be a statistic. So the same, my husband was like, you're an educator. Why you're teaching other children? Why don't you just teach your own? And so I resigned, and I've been homeschooling ever since.
I'll go next. Somewhat similar. Our family is blended with biological and adopted children, so we're raising Black and brown children, and I didn't want to put my kids into the school to prison pipeline. And on a more core level, we just really wanted our children to grow that lifelong learning mindset, and wanted them to have that time to develop on their own timeline and not some artificial one. And finally, really just be able to have that time to explore their interests to the fullest. And then the last one would just be, my husband has a really non-traditional schedule. So if they were in traditional school, they would basically never have time with dad. So homeschooling allows us that family time.
Yeah, we were similar, except I was the breadwinner. So I was just looking at school as, I would come home, we'd have dinner, clean up, do homework, bath, go to sleep, and that was it, So it's like family time is only going to be on the weekend. But another reason was lifestyle. Well, not lifestyle, but um, uh, he went to kindergarten, and it was a great school, it was a top school, and he did great in kindergarten. He was like teacher's pet, so he would have had no issue continuing through school. Um, but we wanted something more. He wasn't like that eager to go to school in the morning. We wanted him to love school. And so before he went to kindergarten, we were with a homeschooling group doing preschool stuff. And we asked him before first grade, do you want to go back to school? And he goes, I want to do the classes that we used to do. So that's why we started.
Thank you for sharing that with us. I'd like to transition to another question, which is the joys. So what did you enjoy the most from homeschooling those students that you graduated?
Surprisingly, right, I have something to say about this. So the joys, we're actually in the process of moving, and we're, we've been in this house for 10 years, right? And we have we have a box called Homeschool Essentials. It's the first box that we're going to unpack at our new place in case the rest of the stuff doesn't quite get there. And in that process of cleaning up, my daughter has been able to look at all of her stuff from kindergarten, and she's going through it. And I have to tell you guys, it was the most touching thing. I didn't know I was going to answer this question, so I didn't have this prepared. It actually happened. My daughter was going through her bins of schoolwork, and she looked at me and she says, "Mom, I always thought that I was at a disadvantage because you homeschooled me, because I wasn't doing what the other kids were doing. I kind of felt that way. Everybody was like, oh, you're not in regular school, real school. Your mom's school is not real," which, never mind, that's a whole other story. But she says, I look at my work and I can't believe the quality of work that I was putting out. Holy cow, I know so much about other things. I know so much about just life. And I just know. She says, I was a fantastic writer. I had no idea. And so, I mean, that's one of the joys of homeschooling, but it's also one of the joys of being on the end part of it. So after graduation, when you're looking at it, you're looking back and you say to yourself, yo, it was not a waste of time. It was not a waste of time. And I was following my gut the entire time. You know how sometimes we fly by the seat of our pants? You know what I'm saying? There's some days we're just like, I do not know if this is going to go well. But what I can tell you is after all of these years, because we homeschool from birth as well, like, from the womb, we're reading the periodical table of elements to our children. Anyway, sometimes I think I'm funny, but what I do want to tell you is that the other joy is just I know who my kids are. Okay. I know who my kids are. We have a really strong family culture. Why? Because we've spent so much time together and we do everything together that we look at each other, we crack up. I know my children, they're always like, Mom, stop being so accurate. And I'm like, because I know you. And you can't lie to me either, by the way. So my relationship with my children is one that is really, I mean, we're close, right? And it's not because we're like, oh, let's sing kumbaya and let's be around the table. It's none of that. It's because we do what we want to do. I honor them, they honor me. And it's just that joy. I mean, I can't even begin to tell you. I wish that I could give you a little bit of this energy, right? And this experience if you haven't had it. I would love to bottle that up and give it to you and tell you, man, this feels like freedom. Taste this, man. This is awesome. This is some good stuff. That's what I would love to say about that. But it's not always joyful during the process. Oh, Lord Jesus is not joyful during the process. So if somebody's lying to you and telling you that, you come and send them my way, that's a lie. That is easy. But joy, oh heck yeah. Joy comes in the morning, you guys, just like the saying. But yeah, there's joy. I mean, you're going to make it through.
Yeah. I agree. Same like Brenda. Being that I've done both, I've done the working full time and having my kids go to public school, and then now I'm at home homeschooling. I mean, our days were getting up at the crack of dawn, getting them ready for school, dropping them off, going to work, coming home, picking them up, making dinner, let's go to baseball practice, soccer game, coming home, homework, bath time, go to sleep. And this was day in, day out, day in, day out. And you don't really have that time to nurture the relationship and get to know them. It was just go, 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 go. So for me, what I've enjoyed the most is the time. You know, everything can go slower. We can go to the park. We can go enjoy a museum and it's empty, or just spending the time with each other and getting to know each other. And like Brenda said, sometimes you just look at them and you know what they're gonna do, or you know what they're gonna say, but they also know you. You know, they also know you when you're joking, when you need a minute, when mom's serious, let's not bother her because she's gonna go cray cray. You know, you really get to know each other, and you can be bored together, but just being together is all you need. And that has given me the greatest joy with homeschooling.
I think what I've enjoyed the most is being able to sit back and watch when the magic happens of when a child is pursuing something that they really are interested in and allowing them that space and time to really fully develop it. And now that I've graduated my oldest, I can look back and see how it's actually serving him in adulthood, because he taught himself to sew at like 8 or 9 years old, and he's spent a lot of years. He's an artist, so he does all sorts of forms of art. But anyway, he was working on cosplay and costuming, and he's going to college, but he also just got a part-time job with a master costume designer, and he's loving it. And she's loving having a young person passionate about the craft. So, and I think if he had been in regular school, he never would have had that time to pursue those interests and talents. And he's all self-taught, and so it's amazing watching that. I didn't have any part of it other than just letting him have that space to do it.
For us, I would say the best part was community. We had a lot of fun homeschooling, going on field trips, hanging out with friends. And, you know, besides the kids having friends, you know, the parents were friends, our families were friends. So we went camping, you know, so I think that was the best part for us.
So looking back on your time homeschooling during those high school years, go ahead and give us a couple of words to describe how your experience was homeschooling those high school years. If you had to put it into a few descriptive words, like what was that experience like for you as the parent?
For me, I would say it was a great experience. I hope everyone really it gets encouraged to homeschool through high school, because you're seeing them, they're young adults, you know, they're their own person. And I would say it's more like I was his manager, and he was just already doing everything independently, but I was just there to make sure that, you know, he was on task, right? And we're preparing, you know, I'm preparing him into adulthood. And so for me, that's how I would describe it. It was just been a very great experience. He did get to go to prom. He did have a graduation ceremony. You know, he went to homecoming. So I don't feel he missed any of those traditional public school, you know, milestones. But more than anything, I felt like I was his manager, just watching from the sideline.
I to kind of piggyback on that, I joke that I'm my children's personal assistant, like that they would never be able to afford because I handle so much of the back end paperwork, especially in the high school level. But I definitely, yeah, in high school, I'm not the teacher anymore. I work towards for my kids to be independent. So having them, pretty much in charge of their learning and me sort of presenting opportunities or leading them to those if they need it, and but sort of making them responsible for that and outsourcing as much as I can. It takes off a lot of stress.
So somebody will probably correct me and say she said that. But honestly, 3 words came to mind. So first of all, is that for me, this experience was the most feminist thing I could possibly do. And that's usually like one of the things that people are like, oh my God, you're at home and you're staying home with your children, and that's not empowering. You should be out in the workforce. And I'm like, do you even know how feminist and empowering it is? I have 3 girls and I'm raising world changers. If you've ever met my children, you will know. All of them keep their mouth shut when they talk about homeschooling because Brenda's girls are always an exception. But this is a feminist thing that I did. I stood for my children as a mother, right? Another word is badass, because that's what this made my daughters. That's what this journey is forming in my daughters. And I'm going to tell you something. It's also developed a badass in me. Why? Because it's not easy to be the only person in the community doing this. And then furthermore, it's not easy when everyone in your co-op you are the only one that looks like you. And you know what I'm saying. Okay. Especially here in the Southwest, where there is just a ton of ethnocentrism and racism and anti-immigrant sentiment. I mean, you name it. I'm Puerto Rican and I still get told that I shouldn't be in this country. And so the reason why I say that is it makes you stand. I'm teaching children how to stand. So they're going to be future badasses. I mean, they're already born badass because they're mine. But I just, I wanted to share that. So not only did it make me more badass, and did it make me an avowed feminist? I don't care what you have to say about that, but you understand what I'm saying. And the last one, it transformed me into a coach. I'm a mentor and a guide. I'm not a teacher anymore. I stopped teaching she was 6 years old the day she came to me with a workbook and said, can I stop having you teach me now? And I looked at her, I was like, what? And she says, all the instructions are in the book and I can read them. You can go do something else. And that little girl hasn't stopped. Now she's 18 going on 19. And now I'm like, I should have done that. I probably should have gotten her started at 2. It would have been a lot easier, but I didn't tell her that. I didn't want to discourage her. But I'm a coach now. And that's all I do, is just like some of you ladies, for a fact, outsource as much as you can during high school, especially if you have other children. Okay. So yeah, coach, badass, and feminist. That is what homeschooling has done for me.
For us, we unschooled. So high school is the same as middle school. So, I'm just there to facilitate. Okay, high school, maybe more driving is involved, but yeah, yeah, he just studied whatever he wanted. There was a lot of art. Of course, there were video games, hanging out with friends. His senior year was during COVID, so that was a little different. But yeah, it was actually the same.
Thank you all for sharing. I think we've covered a little bit of your experience and also some of the joys, but we all know that challenges come with anytime our student reaches a new milestone or a new era. So I'd like to ask all of you, did you have a unique challenge that you want to share that you came across during those high school years in your homeschool?
I'll answer.
Okay, I'll go next.
Sorry. I think for the high school level, it's a little bit, it carries on from the younger years, but kind of trying to let go of both the family and the societal pressures that my kid's success is completely a reflection of my choice to homeschool. I married into an immigrant family. My in-laws sacrificed everything to come here and bring their 5 teens here for the educational opportunities. And then when I said that's not good enough for our kids, they were like, whoa, wait a minute. What are you doing? So, and then they kept asking me in high school, you're still going to do that? So just that's always challenging, the cultural aspects of it. So.
The challenge for us was my son didn't know what he wanted to do when he grew up. And not that there's any pressure in that, but I always felt like, my background is I was a high school teacher. So it was like, well, high school is supposed to set you up for the real world. High school is preparation for the real world. So it just that challenge, is he going to be college bound? Is he going to be, go to, be on, work, learn a trade, learn a skill, teaching, real world, how to manage his finances, how to pay bills, how to, do handiwork around the house, basically like set him up to be just a good human, right? But to be able to go into adulthood and live independently. And so, that was a challenge. We, I put him in workshops. I, found camps, even though they were like week-long camps meant for public school kids, but they were in the summer. So I would sign him up, like architecture camp, coding camp, all even culinary, because there was a time that he wanted to go into culinary. He did a culinary camp. And so it was just him finding what his strengths and his weaknesses were career-wise until he found what he loved and his passion. And then we just, really focused on that. But I would say that was our biggest challenge in high school, is how can we prepare him to be an independent adult?
So as for me, I mean, we definitely had challenges and we still have them. But the biggest thing for me really has been drowning out all the noise socially, essentially, and having to feel like we're always having to defend our, our choice. I'll give you an example. I also married into an immigrant family. My former spouse was born in Central America. And in Central America, what they do is they pay for absolutely everything in public school even, right? So they would say, ¿por qué vas a pagar por el colegio? Porque hay escuela pública, there's free school here. Why would you, we take advantage. And then a couple generations after, you're like, public school is going to kill my child. I'm like, I can't, and I'm not saying public school is bad. Obviously, I worked in public school and it wasn't a terrible thing. I just, didn't think it was a fit for us. So the challenge was not only, I think for a while there, I was trying to convince myself that this was the right thing. And then trying to rah, and give my children confidence during that time too, because people were in their ears saying, you're not going to real school. Your mom's not a real teacher, which, okay. But you can be a certified teacher, by the way, certified teacher here. And you're still not good enough because you're their mom, because everybody else knows more about your children than you do, according to them. Right? So the challenge for me was drowning out that noise. But a little funny thing happened. We've been homeschooling since, I would say, well, from birth, so that would be 2005. Okay. That's a bit of time. What I will tell you is that when the pandemic happened, ooh, my phone blew up. Oh, I was no longer that weird homeschooler. Okay. My videos were going viral all of a sudden, just personal videos that I was sending out to people. And they're like, I'm like, all of a sudden I go on a neighborhood page and there's my video. Somebody uploaded it. And then after that, they're like, this weirdo ended up in a film about homeschooling, right? And now what now? And then they watch that and they're like, oh, so tell me more about that. How did you do that? And they start whispering, I've been thinking about homeschooling on the down low. You know what I'm saying? So the pandemic came up and finally we all got our due. We're like, we've been doing this forever. What I think for me though was what's kind of interesting, at least I think it's interesting, that challenge became a platform for me. That challenge gave me an opportunity to say, yeah, I can tell you. And now I'm saying that nationally, and now I'm saying that around the world. I have that platform now because I was that weirdo. But you gotta drown them out. You gotta put your fingers in your ear and say la 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 la. You can do that in English, you can do it in Spanish, however you want to sing, whatever song, mariachi, reggae, you do it, whatever makes you happy. But you gotta plug in those ears and just understand that you are the best person for your children. So that was my challenge.
Excellent. Thank you for sharing that with us. I would like to ask you for my last question. Um, we often hear from homeschooling parents who they say, "Oh, well, I'm homeschooling the younger years, but I just don't think I can do the high school years. It'll be too hard." So for those parents who are homeschooling now, but they're worried about homeschooling for high school, what advice or guidance would you give them?
I would say outsource everything you can. Check in your state to see what is available. Like in California here, high schoolers get free community college. So my oldest graduated with 41 transferable units. My second oldest will have her associate's degree before she graduates. So there's a lot of opportunities there. I'm not their teacher. I just find the classes and find the opportunity, or they do it on their own. And then they're better prepared for, college or whatever they choose beyond that. So yeah, mentors, find the volunteer opportunities together with them, and they'll find community members that they can learn from. That's the biggest thing, is to just, realize that you aren't the teacher anymore. You're just the mentor, and you're the assistant, and that's your job now.
Yes, just agreeing with Ginger. Exactly. I was gonna say the same thing. It's not as hard as you think, because you can either buy curriculum that's already made, or you can outsource and they can take a class. But I feel like most states offer either free or low dual credit courses. Here in Houston, we have to pay $65 per course, but even that is cheaper than most curriculum, right? So it's been, it's not that hard. And I would say, in addition to that, really focus, if you're just starting to homeschool at the high school level, really focus on building that relationship and really getting to know each other, because it's not something that most parents get a chance to do, to really get to know what your child is, where their strengths and weaknesses are, and also to help them navigate what career path they're going to take. If you have younger kids, start teaching them how to be independent learners, so that by the time they get to high school, they can jump into doing the dual credit or the outsourcing classes, because they're already independent learners. So that's my advice.
For me, it's before you even get into high school and long before this. I mean, you can do this or not do this, but I'll give you a real practical tip that you could probably do right now. No matter how old your child is, reverse engineer it, yo. Look at the future and ask yourself, what kind of human am I building? What kind of person am I building? What are we working towards? In the best version, of course, you get input from your children on this, because you're their guide and their mentor, not their dictator, right? You develop that vision. And so what I did when my kid was really small, I got on my computer and I started writing out all the things that I thought would make a successful person. I actually have that. I call that my homeschool manifesto. Still have a copy of that. And I just started writing, this is what I want them to know about math, not a curriculum. It was more like, I want them to be confident in math. History, right? I want them to know where they came from. Writing, I want them to be able to convince anybody to do, anything for them. And then I thought about their emotional health. And I have a puppy, by the way. I thought about their emotional health and how did I want them to feel, including that. I wanted them to be confident. I wanted them to be joyful. I wanted them to be happy. And I started with that process. So I reversed engineered it. I looked at the end result and I worked backwards. And so in developing that vision, because ultimately that's what I'm talking about, you develop that vision right? For the child, you work backwards. Then high school, in one sense, kind of takes care of itself because at that point, you're just plugging in resources, right? And here's another thing. Here's a dirty little secret that some of you are actually probably very familiar with. As a public school teacher, I used a lot of resources. A lot of the things were already mapped out for me. The reason why I'm saying that is because we tend to put teachers on a pedestal and say, look at them, they know all this stuff. No, they don't. No, they do not. They have to follow instructions too. So if you don't want to do that, you can also find another person who can follow instructions. It's not that hard. And I'm not saying that homeschooling high school is easy. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is give yourself a break and focus on that child and their development. What do you want your family to feel like? And I can tell you, focusing on that, I know with my oldest daughter, that joy that I was talking about, man, I feel it every day because I look at my daughter and I said, I want a confident woman. I want a woman who stands up for herself. I want a woman who's proud of her culture and stands up for herself. I have a daughter who is proud of her culture. I have a daughter who stands up for herself. You see, we can do multiplication, we can do algebra, we can do biology. Back to that periodical table of elements, right? We can do all of that. And that's going to be helpful on their standardized tests and their college courses content. But what are you developing as a person? So you stop all the curriculum planning, pull back and write it down. What am I trying to do with this? Who are these future ancestors that I'm developing? So that would be my advice.
Well, I want to thank all our panelists for being with us today and sharing their wonderful wisdom. I'm going to go ahead and hand it back to Gisela at this moment.
Thank you, ladies, so much for sharing your wisdom and I just love listening to you guys about different reasons why you were homeschooling. And I never even thought I would get to this part of my, I don't know, of homeschooling. I never thought I was capable of doing it. And my right now my daughter, I'm outsourcing some classes for her because she felt that she was missing out on what they were doing in high school, like her high school friends, that she needed to have a lot more work to do because of that. And so, you know, I answered her prayer. I put her in in a class or two. And now her sister and we have our routine of going to do certain activities during the week. And now because she has this schedule, not all the time, but it conflicts with that schedule, she can't be with us. She's like, now, you know, she can't have, she wants the best, I guess, of both worlds, but then she's doing really well in this class. So I think if I was doing a bad job, she wouldn't have been doing well right now. So I think it's a lot of misconception on both ends. We feel like we're not adequate or qualified to do this, and yet maybe our kids feel they're missing out on a lot. And then when, you know, then they realize, wow, I actually do know quite a bit, just like Brenda said about her daughter. Okay, so thank you, ladies. I have our next speaker, Geneva from Arcos, study abroad. I felt this was a great opportunity because some of the people who registered for this event aren't here because they're going to receive a recording, and you know, it conflicts with some of the things that their activities that they have going on. So so that's why we're recording this, and also it's live right now on YouTube, as we're trying to get the channel more with more followers to upload information there. uh but she's going to be talking about our upcoming study abroad trip in the spring, and we're trying to do this to have a space for Latino homeschoolers to go on a trip together where we're learning about our heritage, our culture. And these trips aren't only organized in Mexico, they're organized also in other parts of Latin America and Spain. So I'll just hand it over to Geneva. Thank you for being here.
Hello, everyone. Mucho gusto, encantada. My name is Geneva. And first off, thank you so much to Gisela and Latinos Homeschooling. We're really excited about this program that we've created together and even more excited to share it with you today. I've been listening in for a few minutes here and just very inspired by what everyone is sharing and resonated a lot. As a Latina mom, I have two girls myself. And like you were just saying a few minutes ago, Brenda, like how important it is for our kids to know their histories, know where they come from, and to really have not just a knowledge, but a real appreciation for Latino cultures. And so that's really what this program that we've created together with Latinos Homeschooling is all about. So I wanted to share a little bit about who we are and what we do first off, and then go in a little more depth into our program that we've created together, our study abroad program in Oaxaca. So Arcos Abroad, we're based out of Austin, Texas. And as Gisela said a moment ago, we offer high school and gap year and university programs abroad in Costa Rica, in Argentina, in Mexico, and in España and Peru. And we offer them throughout the year. And this particular program that we've created just for Latinos homeschooling is coming up this spring. So I'm going to share a screen here and let me know if you can see that. So this is our website to our program in Oaxaca. I'm going to also pop this link into the chat so that you can grab it for yourselves and follow along here as well. Let me just put it in here. Okay, there we go. So if it looks better on your screen, feel free to open it up on your screen as well. So we've created this really exciting Spanish and cultural immersion program in Oaxaca, Mexico. I'm sure some of you have been to Mexico before and to Oaxaca. It's an amazing, beautiful place. And so this program will be offered this coming spring from March 22nd to March 31st. It is 10 days long. And it's open to Latinos homeschooling students and homeschooling students anywhere between 14 to 18 years of age. So for your high school kids. And we've also opened it up if you would like to come with your kids and your family and have your high schooler in our program and also come along and join us in Oaxaca. It's open to families as well. So we've set it up with that in mind for you. So to tell you a little bit about how these 10 days will go. Of course, the faculty leader is Gisela herself, who will be on the program with her own kids. And then we also have our own Arcos staff in Oaxaca and the resident director who will be leading the program and everything that goes along with it. What we've created is a really nice itinerary that weaves together Spanish classes. So every morning, from Monday to Friday, your kids will be able to take Spanish class at the UABJO, which is the Universidad Autónoma Benito Juárez. So they actually get to have a pre-university experience inside of a beautiful Mexican university, taking Spanish classes. And we're welcoming students with anywhere between beginner to intermediate Spanish to join. And then basically at Arcos, we're supporting the whole process from before the program starts, making sure that everyone knows what you need to know as far as packing list, the program calendar, who your Arcos director will be. We'll hold a pre-orientation online so we can answer questions and anything else that you want to know about the program before it starts. And then once you arrive in country, we'll be picking you up at the airport, taking you or your kids to their host family. So that's a big part of this program. And what we really love, I think it's the heart of the program, is being able to live with a family. We place our students 2 to 3 per home. And if you come with your child, you'll be able to be with them in the same home or separately, whatever you choose. And also, of course, eating the delicious meals, breakfast, lunch, and dinner with the host family, which are my favorite meals and memories are always around the kitchen table and having the mole negro and all the amazing foods there. So basically they get to stay with the family, take the Spanish class at the university from Monday to Friday, and then throughout the week, we're weaving in excursions and cultural activities and experiences to really be immersed and get to know all different facets of the history and the culture in Oaxaca. So I'll want to pop over here to our program overview. So this gives you an idea of what we'll be doing and what's all included. As I talked about the host family, the cultural activities, the excursions, visiting different sites around Oaxaca itself. Here's a little bit of a typical day, having breakfast in the morning. Oaxaca is a very walkable, beautiful city full of murals and cobbled streets and churches and so much history and colors. And so they'll get to walk to the UABJO. And then after class, have lunch, maybe take a little siesta, and then afterwards do our cultural activities in the afternoon, and then come back for dinner and go to sleep for the next day. To give you a little more idea of the excursions we'll be going to, if you've ever been to Oaxaca, it's a mind-blowing site of the Monte Alban archaeological site, which are just absolutely incredible. And we like to start our program there. So that will be our first excursion the day after arrival, going to Monte Alban, having a full tour and walking through and being able to touch and even walk up to the top of these incredible monuments. And that really gives the tone and the context for the cultures and the histories that we're stepping into in Oaxaca. It's because it's such a diverse place in and of itself. Then we'll also be getting to go to Teotitlan del Valle, which is a beautiful village, an artisan village. These beautiful weavings behind me are from Teotitlan del Valle, and we get to visit an indigenous women's cooperative. It's a Zapotec group of Zapotec women who decided to change their entire story and their history by learning how to weave, which was traditionally only reserved for men, and then to create this incredible cooperative that they've literally woven together themselves. And it's a beautiful experience. We get to see how all these vibrant colors are made out of natural plants and animals and minerals. So it's an amazing excursion, one of my favorites. And then we also get to go to Hierve el Agua, which is a beautiful mountain springs, hiking through the high desert, learning about the medicinal plants, and then actually getting to swim in these beautiful pools that are overlooking the entire valley. So it's a beautiful excursion. And then for our cultural activities, these are in the afternoons, as I mentioned. So we'll be doing, of course, a welcome activity, doing a walking tour, just getting to know Oaxaca City, going to the Zócalo, trying the nieves, all the different flavors, having chapulines, like all the flavors, all the experiences that you can find in the city. And then we're also going to do a cooking class. So I think this is another really amazing way to learn. It's more than just learning recipes. It's more than just learning about the food. It's learning about la milpa. It's learning about all the histories that these native foods and the corn and the beans and the squash, all of those histories that weave together to make these recipes and that are still so alive today. And it's very hands-on, very delicious way to learn and really immerse in the culture. We'll also be going to spend some time with local youth and doing a volunteer day at a local youth center. So that'll be an opportunity for your high school kids to be able to take on some leadership skills here. And before they even arrive, think about what are the activities that we want to present, what are the games, what are the sports, what are our passions that we want to share, and also be able to receive from the local kids. We'll also be doing a printmaking class, which again is much more than just an art class. It's really a history class with El Taller Artístico Comunitario. So they're a local group of young artists and activists, and learning about how art is a part of how they express themselves, all the political and social movements in Oaxaca that have happened in the past and that continue to happen today. So it's a very hands-on learning workshop that's much more than just the art. It's really a much deeper and even more complex context that they're learning through this art class. And of course, we always do a nice dance class. They're going to do some salsa, merengue, cumbia, and just have an enjoyable time together with our dance instructor at our dance studio in Oaxaca. So that's a little overview of what the activities are going to look like. And then a little more about what what we're looking to gain out of this. As Brenda was talking about, it's much more. Like you said, it's like who are the human beings that we are forming, and what are these types of experiences able to give them in terms of building their own identities and their own understanding and their own appreciation of Latin American cultures. And so every activity that we've designed together with Gisela that we've chosen has an intention behind it. It's more than just doing this hands-on activity. It's like, what is it teaching me about the cultures here, the peoples here, the histories here, and myself? As they're also learning Spanish and being able to converse and get to know and be a part of their Oaxacan host family. So that's our program in a nutshell. Basically, if you're interested and you're excited about this and you think this might be a great fit for your family and for your kids, we encourage you to reach out to us, reach out to me, reach out to Gisela, grab this link from the chat and save it. You'll find my information here at the bottom, as well as Gisela's email right here. And then to apply, you basically just go to this link and click the registration link. You'll fill out a form which will get you started with us, and then we're happy to walk you along through the process. The hard deadline is going to be on December 28th. And then we encourage you to apply as soon as you can because the spots are limited. We are going to keep a nice, close, tight-knit group. And it is first come, first serve. So the sooner you apply, the sooner we can secure your spot in the program. And then all the information here about the price, it is $19.95 per student. If a parent wants to come along, they'll be involved in all the activities, host family excursions, but you'll have free time while your child is in class in the mornings. So the prices are in here as well. And basically everything that we went over today, you can find right here on our website. So I'd like to open the floor if we have a couple minutes for questions, or if there's anything else, Gisela, that you'd like to add or that I missed that I can cover, please let me know.
No, there was a lot of interest. So if you know anybody that's not here, if you're thinking about it, please join us. We need, I think, at least 10 people, right?
That's
And
correct.
and you know, you as a parent can come and you know, we can, as the moms, we can do other things while the kids are in class. It would just be a great experience to add to their homeschooling years and, you know, for all of us to continue to build this community. Thank you so much. If anybody has any questions, feel free to turn off your mic. If not, all the information's on the website. I meant turn on your mic, sorry. Thanks, Geneva.
My pleasure. Thank you all. Thank you for having me. And I look forward to having you in our program in Oaxaca.
Thank you.
Gracias. Bye.
So we are actually running a little bit over on time, but I'm gonna I'm gonna just jump into our next final talk as well. For KD, I think you're here. She was at our conference, our live conference, and she's gonna give information about, well, college counseling, which is very important.
All right. Thank you, everyone. And I just have to say, I want to go on your trip. My son did a study abroad in Oaxaca, and it was a formative experience for him. He still talks about it, and did a lot of the things that you mentioned there. So I'm jealous. I'd love to go. So I am here to give you a little bit of an overview about what's next after high school. And so what I want to do, I am going to share screen because I have a presentation here. So give me 1 second, optimize for video clip, and there we go. So, hello, there we go. Okay, great. So can everybody see the screen, I assume? So I want to just take you on a little bit of a journey. Some of you may be looking way ahead to college admissions. You might have younger children, or you may have someone who maybe is even a senior this year. And I want to just go over some broad information and also point you to some information that I and we at Oak Meadow can provide for you, that some resources for you as you embark on this exciting journey. So very quickly, I am Katie Maynard. I am Oak Meadow's college counselor, and I do other things for Oak Meadow at Oak Meadow. I have, as you can probably tell by my gray hair, I have over 4 decades of experience in this transition from high school into college. So I've worked at a lot of colleges in admissions, in advising. I've been a dean of students and an academic dean. I've also worked in high schools. So I just love students at this critical moment in their lives. And I know, you know, Brenda was talking about how it can be a tough time socially, and there's a lot of hype about it, and I couldn't agree more. But it's also a really wonderful developmental moment. And I hope to help dispel some of the myths and set you up so that you can find the joy in this time and not just be subject to all that hype. So I'm not going to take a moment just because it's later and I want to keep us moving. But please do use the chat window to post any questions or comments. And I am just going to take a moment and open the chat window on my screen so that I make sure, come on, you can work. There we go. So I can make sure I see anything that comes from you. And please, someone let me know. Sometimes you get a black square on your picture when I open up my chat window. So if that's happening, unmute and let me know right away, please. So I'll assume that's not the case. And I want to start off with just a very short little video clip. It's actually from the state of Iowa. But what I want to share in this clip is to just remind all of us that there are lots of different options following high school. So let's just start off with a quick little.
What is college? Many people think that college means an additional 4 years of school at a college or university. But what college really means is any education that you complete after high school that leads to the certificate, diploma, or degree that will unlock the possibility for your successful future. A certificate can be earned in 1 year or less, while some diplomas can be earned in 2 years or less, both at a community college, career, technical, or business college, and even some four-year colleges. Earning a certificate or diploma can prepare you for careers such as a paralegal, cosmetologist, welder, chef, certified nursing assistant, or radiological technician. An associate's degree usually takes 2 years to complete at any community college and some career colleges or four-year colleges. If you're looking for a career as a dental hygienist, administrative assistant, registered nurse, or veterinary technician, just to name a few, you'll need an associate's degree to make it possible. A bachelor's or undergraduate degree typically takes at least 4 years to complete at a four-year college or university. Teachers, engineers, accountants, dietitians, and social workers are examples of the people who need a bachelor's degree to start their chosen career. After completing a bachelor's degree, many students move on to an advanced degree to study a specific career area. Some advanced degrees include master's degrees, doctoral degrees, or professional degrees. These programs can take several additional years, depending on the degree and the area of study. But if you want to be a doctor, dentist, veterinarian, or lawyer, for instance, you'll need to earn an advanced degree. Apprenticeship programs are another way to continue your education after high school. These programs offer you the chance to work with a professional mentor and learn the skills needed to be an electrician, plumber, carpenter, or work in another skilled trade field. Apprenticeship programs allow you to earn money and a credential at the same time. A certificate, degree, or other credential is the key to improving your future. With so many possibilities, you shouldn't be asking, should I go to college? Instead, you should ask yourself, which college path is the right one for me? Because college is possible for all Iowans. It is possible for you. For more tips and
Okay, I'm going to cut off their little ending with resources that they have. And I want to just add one thing to the message that they gave there. Of some form of college, whatever it is right for everyone. I also want to make sure that people understand that you don't have to do it immediately following high school. There's plenty of time. You may start out on one path, get excited about something else, and take another path. And that's just being adult and being human. So again, a lot of the pressure that I think is put on young people today really doesn't need to be there. We need to kind of calm down and say, wait, there are lots of options and lots of time to kind of figure this out. Hang on. There we go. Okay, so back to my presentation. I'm going to talk a lot about colleges and four-year colleges and what to expect or think about when you're getting ready to apply to them. And one of the things that I bring up in every presentation I do for people is that lots is shifting. Reality has been changing after decades, literally decades of college admissions not changing very much at all. It's been changing a lot in recent years, both in 4 and 2-year college admissions. So what's happening with standardized tests? The pendulum swung to not requiring them. Some schools are starting to require them again. The affirmative action decision 2 summers ago had big impact. We're just getting some of the statistics now about the impacts that that had. If you've been watching the news, this last year, there was a big revision of the FAFSA, which is the free application for federal student aid, the required form for any college student wanting any kind of financial support in going to college. It was a mess. I'll just say it that way. It was a mess. And it was usually the FAFSA's available October 1st. The government didn't have it ready. They said it would be ready December 31st. They turned it on. It wasn't ready. It was a mess. And they're going through more revisions this year. So expect some churn and turmoil in that again. And there are other things that are shifting and changing in college admissions, which I won't go into right now. I also want to mention that things are changing in workplaces, and expectations and assumptions about what's important in order to get a job. Those things are shifting really rapidly as well. A big piece of that is the onset of artificial intelligence, but there are other things happening. So I say all of this just to say, recognize that there's going to be change and stay on top of it. Stay as informed as you can be. And I'm just checking the chat window. I'm not seeing any comments or questions, but please feel free to jump in at any point. And there we go. Okay, so the what's next process is not a quick one. Ideally, it is part of a long continuum. And for the student, it's really helping that student figure out who they are and what options will best meet their needs. And again, I tuned in just at the end of your panel discussion. And I loved what Brenda was saying about reverse engineering and thinking about who is this human being I'm sending off into the world, and what do I want for that human being? And so as parents, we have a lot of influence, and we try to shape students, young people as they emerge, but we also need to tune in to who they are and really respond to that. And as a student is approaching the end of high school and thinking about what's next, they're at a developmental point where they are stepping up and assuming more responsibility or more of a role in that process. So it's all about who you are, and that you is the student. So who is the student as a person, a human being, as a learner, as a community member, as a peer with all of their friends, as somebody who has interests and needs and passions and talents and preferences. All of those things are important considerations as you think about potentially applying to colleges, figuring out where you might want to apply. So one early thing that I recommend is that the student, with help from family and perhaps others, determine what I call your non-negotiables. So your non-negotiables are those features of a college experience. If you want to go to college, they're characteristics of a college experience that are so important to you at this point in your life that you won't sacrifice them. You won't give up on getting them as part of your college experience. And those non-negotiables are different for every student. There's no judgment about them. It's just, what does an individual student want? So for one student, it may be a particular area of study. Personally, when I was getting ready to leave high school, I've been exposed to a linguistics class, and I was so excited about it. That was what I knew I wanted to study, even though at that point there were only 4 schools in the country that offered it to undergraduates. Other Other students may have a particular job or a career that they've been focused on. I want to be a doctor. I want to be an astronaut. I want to be a visual artist. For some people, what they're really excited about is a particular activity or skill that you pursue that you may not get academic credit for, but that's so important to you. Wherever you're going to spend 4 years for a college education, you want to make sure you can keep on doing it. So I've worked with college students, aspiring college students, who have been avid horseback riders, perhaps equestrian competitors, and they not only want to be able to continue riding while they're in college, whether there's a equestrian team or not, they may even bring their horse to college or to board nearby. Some people want to continue to play ultimate frisbee, or I love being in plays. I want to participate in theatrical productions, even if I'm not majoring in that. So those are valid. That's important. Again, no judgment. That may be an important feature for a student of something they want to have access to at college. Since the pandemic, we've heard a lot about traditional college experiences. And during the pandemic, when everybody was sent home to learn remotely from their bedroom, instead of being in college, students were saying, but I wanted to live in a dorm. I wanted to have roommates. I wanted to be with people all my age. I wanted to go to football game, whatever it was. People lost out on that experience. And if that's something you're really looking for, great. Just name that as one of your non-negotiables. On the flip side of that coin, there are plenty of students who say, I need to go to a college where I am guaranteed that there will be a substance-free residential hall where I can feel comfortable declining any of the partying scene. It's just not me. It's not what I want to do. Great. If that's what you are interested in, make sure any college you apply to will provide that. Affordability and assumption of debt are huge criteria in choosing what college to go to. And that's something that families need to talk about and really consider. I do want to caution you that the price tag that's given for a school on their website or in a in a listing of colleges, the price tag of here's what it costs, tuition, room, board, fees, etc. Very few students actually pay that price tag. And the reality is these days, you can't always figure out what it would cost a particular family to go to a particular school. And a number of times, the schools with the biggest price tags may give the biggest financial aid packages and scholarship packages, which means that the out-of-pocket cost at a higher price school may be less than an in-state school or a much lower price school. My daughter, when she went to college, when she was going to college, I was working in a state system. She had free tuition through me at her state university, which is a really good state university. Free tuition. And yet, our family out-of-pocket cost was much cheaper for her to go to a private college 1,000 miles away than to go to her in-state institution where she would not have to pay a penny of tuition. You got to pay attention to the big picture, and it's risky. I get that. It's scary. But don't count on the price tags being the actual price that people pay. For some people, rankings and perceptions of status are what are really important. And, they want to know that, a college my daughter goes to is on the US News and World Reports. For other people, no, not interested at all. Again, it's your decision and the student's decision, but just be aware of it. And if that's an important factor and feature for you, take it into account. And then the timing ties into what I said earlier, short versus long-term goals. For some people, taking a year off or a couple years off, maybe earning money, maybe getting other experience is a great way to line yourself up for that longer term success. So whatever your non-negotiables are, I urge you to think about them and talk about them and write them down, formalize them in some ways. Those non-negotiables, chances are going to shift over time, especially if a student starts thinking about them in the beginning of high school. Developmentally, there's a lot of change during those high school years. So don't think of it as, etched in stone. It's something that will continue to evolve. And just pay attention to it. You all, I could hear from, again, what I heard in the panel. You all are great at listening to your students and observing them and understanding who they are and what they're looking for. And just continue to do that. That is a huge gift. So I hear students say all the time, okay, so you got me to think about my non-negotiables, but then I started looking at the colleges and I'm completely overwhelmed. I don't know how to start. The reality is, in the United States, there are approximately 5,000 colleges and universities, with tons more around the world. What you want to look for are the schools that really align with your student and that will serve them well, that will challenge them, but that will also be a relatively safe and comfortable place for them. And you're only going to learn about that through careful research. And that's looking inside who you are as well as outside of yourself. So one way to start looking outside of yourself and explore what options, what of those 5,000 colleges might be reasonable possibilities for me. One way is to use online search engines, and they can help you isolate both career and college options. They're really great tools. They are free. You can pay for them in some settings, but the ones I'm talking about here are all free. And I strongly encourage people to start playing around with them early on. So the standardized test sites, the College Board, those are the people who bring you the SAT. Their big search engine is called Your Big Future. And ACT, the other test people, have a search engine that they call the Navigator. So those are, in my mind, the two best search engines to use. They're the biggest ones. They don't have a lot of bias in them, and they're just really comprehensive and current. The FAFSA, again, that's the people who bring you that financial aid form. They have a search engine. I will candidly say that because they've been in so much turmoil for well over a year now, I would go to one of the standardized test sites for a search engine, just because their system gets bogged down and it's not necessarily as current. So when you're using one of these search engines, you're looking for the ideal fit. What's going to be a good school for me or my daughter? And you can filter, you can set filters dependent on your student's interest. So you may say, I want to be in this part of the country. We're in California. And so therefore I want to say, I want to be on the Pacific coast. And for size, let's see, I don't want a huge school and I don't want a tiny school. So maybe I'll say I want a school of 5,000 to 10,000 students. And academics, I'm really interested in environmental science and geographic setting. I'm not sure I'm really sure, but I'm not a big city person. So maybe I want to say a rural or a suburban setting. And you plug all those things in, and instead of there being 5,000 colleges for you to look at, there may be less than 1,000. There may be 100, and keep playing with those factors. Let's see, I said 5,000 to 10,000. Maybe this time I'm going to say 5,000 to 7,000, or I'm going to say, I want a school that's moderately selective, or whatever. So these search engines have you sign in and give a little bit of demographic information, And then a huge advantage is they keep track of all of the information that you glean from them. And you can use that over a period of time. So it's a great way to narrow the funnel of colleges and universities into what might be good for me. Beyond that, there are commercial sites that you pay for, or that colleges pay for to belong. For instance, the Common Application has a search engine, but colleges have to pay to be part of Common App. And so Common App only shows the 1,000 colleges that are part of the Common App. So you got to be discerning when you use a commercial site, and you have to recognize that books and websites also have their own slant. Think about, oh, do they have a a buck to make in this, or do they have a position that's going to benefit them? So just be aware of that. And then I'm always a fan of talking to people and visiting. And one of the silver linings of the pandemic is that colleges learned that they couldn't expect every student to come and visit them. And so they learned how to put virtual tours or something like that online. So even if you're not physically going to visit, you still have an opportunity to learn more. So you're going to get a list, maybe a long one, from one of those search engines, and then you want to drill down a little bit more. So I talked about the in-person visits, and definitely if you do those, you want to arrange ahead and pre-register. One thing to pay attention for is that despite the affirmative action ruling 2 summers ago, colleges are permitted to offer special events for specific groups of students. And they may pay not just for you while you're doing that visit, they may fly you in. And those are incredible opportunities that I would encourage you to take advantage of. So look for those opportunities. Do more online research. And again, be discerning, cross-reference what you find at a search engine with top 100 schools who offer environmental science list or whatever, and just see what schools keep popping up. There are college fairs, and this acronym here, NACAC, stands for the National Association of College Admissions Counselors. You can go to their website, or specifically nacacfairs.org, and they have in-person as well as virtual college fairs where you can talk to representatives from a number of different colleges at the same time. So those are great opportunities. And then within individual schools, you can do information interviews, you could tap into your network. There are lots of ways to kind of get tidbits of information about different colleges. Oak Meadow and Oak Meadow's college counselor, which is me, can help you. So for our enrolled students, whether they're enrolled full-time getting a diploma from us, or even if, people were talking about at high school, you want to outsource. We have students who will take one Oak Meadow course with us or whatever. And if you are enrolled at Oak Meadow, you have access to some of these resources that are available to enrolled students. I also offer one-on-one college counseling, which for enrolled full-time students is free. For independent folks, people purchase by the hour through our bookstore. And then we offer a series of college counseling webinars that are absolutely free. So I'm going to show you those. Here's our full series. Looking Ahead to College Admissions is a 1-hour program geared toward younger students that's very similar to what I'm doing today. But this list on the right is a more focused list that delves in for specifically thinking about juniors, seniors, and their parents. So the first one is developing your list. How do you figure out where to apply? Going deeper. How do you learn more about those schools? But it's also become really important in college admissions to present yourself to them and let them know of your interest before you even apply. So that next webinar talks about that. Then we have a webinar on applying and the logistics of applications. We have a brand new webinar that we're offering this year that I'm super excited about. It's going to be October 16th, and it is especially for homeschoolers. So it is, what are the things about college admissions applications that are different for homeschoolers than I would be talking about in the rest of this series? And I am bringing in a guest for that, a mom that I worked with closely. Her daughter had taken some Oak Meadow courses, but did a lot of homeschooling and outsourced at a couple of other places. And this mom did an incredible job at preparing and presenting her student to college. Her student took a year off, but is a freshman this year. And so Sharon is going to be joining me, giving first person experience of what it's like to submit applications as homeschoolers. So if you don't go to the whole webinar series, that's the one I'd recommend. I also offer a full hour on writing for the college admissions application. So there may be an essay or short answers or both. I offer one on paying for college, which does not take away your need to talk to financial aid offices. But what I aim to do is give you the terminology and the basic approach so you can be a more informed consumer when you get to talk to financial aid colleges at the places where your student's applying. And then we do offer a webinar on what do you want to do if you want to take a gap. So those are all free webinars. You can go to Oak Meadow, oakmeadow.com, or if you Google college counseling Oak Meadow, you will have a registration form where you can sign up for these webinars. So things to start now, regardless of, hopefully earlier in high school, but regardless, homeschoolers need to document every piece of a student's learning. You have what I call the burden of proof. So you have to keep track of every course, every textbook, every literature book, every grading criterion, every external course that you take for grades 9 through 12. So that's something that is takes a lot of organization, and it really helps if you do it as you go along rather than having to go back and, recreate history. So I'd encourage you all to get working on that right away if you haven't already. For everyone, you also are going to want to list out and document the student's whole self, their lived experience, which basically boils down to how do they spend their time? Activities, community service, camps, trip to Oaxaca, lessons, work, travel, etc. And you want to be able to track that again for the full 4 years of high school. So if you haven't started that kind of a list, do it now. And then one thing we're noticing is more and more colleges, private and public, have their own admissions requirements. So while your state or Oak Meadow may say you're required to do 3 years of math or 3 years of science in high school, there are some colleges that require you to do 4. And you need to know that before you apply because you have to position yourself to be eligible. So if you start to identify schools you're interested in, you want to make sure you're tracking what are their requirements and am I on track to meet them? In terms of academic program, how do you decide what to take as you go along? Look at graduation requirements. Look at your state's graduation requirements, a local high school's graduation requirements, what a college that their student might be interested in. Typically, you want to be able to demonstrate both breadth and depth. Many places will require 4 years of English, 4 years of social studies, and anywhere between 2 and 4 years of science, 2 and 4 years of math, and then some will additionally require foreign language, arts, music, etc., physical education, health. So you want to pay attention to that. For strong students, and I heard about this at your panel before, a number of high school students will enroll in college courses and or in advanced placement courses while they're in high school. They perform incredibly well. They give colleges concrete evidence of this student's ready to perform well at a college level, and the student may get credit that will count toward their ultimate diploma. One thing to be aware of is that that credit may not always map onto the college's degree requirements in a way that it will reduce your time to graduation as much as you think it might. And that's hard information to get from colleges ahead of time. Happy to talk with students, with anybody about the logistics of that, but just be aware that that can happen. Standardized tests are another way. As a homeschooler, you're in a class of one, and they want to have some way of comparing you. So if you do take standardized tests, they can kind of see where you fall among thousands of students in this country. Again, look at requirements for states, for colleges, or for majors. If you want to be an engineer, you really should be taking 4 years of math and 4 years of science, ideally getting ready for, if not into calculus, by the time you graduate from high school. So those are all pieces of the academic program you want to pay attention to, and you want to just stay strong throughout. So I don't want to take a lot of your time, but just I want to encourage you, give the college admissions process time. College admissions is a marathon. It's not a sprint. Again, students should be looking inside themselves as much as you look outside. Talk to lots of people, use all the resources, and make decisions for yourself. Don't get caught up in what other people are thinking and saying. I heard some really profound advice about that when I heard the end of that panel. So please don't get caught up in the hype. And as I was talking about all the changes earlier, stay current. Standardized testing, I'm confident, will continue to change. Applications, early action, early decision, deposits, those deadlines are all shifting. Visits or recruiting. Recruiting often refers to athletes who are going to play at a Division 1 or 2 level, but it also refers to specific populations. So that may be something where you can benefit from, again, a fly-in visit weekend or something like that. Don't get terrified and scared off by costs. There's a lot of tuition discounting, and I explain at least a bit of how that works in the Paying for College webinar. And recognize that the financial aid process, FAFSA, and how financial aid is packaged is going to continue to be in flux for at least another year due to circumstances way beyond your control. But you're not alone. So I'm sorry if I rushed through all of that. I hope I didn't completely overwhelm you, but I would love to hear any questions that you have. So feel free to unmute yourself or pop anything into the chat window.
Thank you. These were actually really good. It was a good guide on what I need to focus on as well and what classes are very important. Somebody said thank you, Katie,
Oh,
Belinda.
great.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely. And just by all means, if anyone has questions, I'm happy to stay on for another little bit to answer them. But our next webinar, the webinar series is actually kicking off next week. So developing your list will be the first of those next Wednesday at 7 p.m. Eastern. So you have plenty of time to register for that or others.
So well, they can register on the website, right?
Yep, just register on the website, exactly.
So let me put it
So,
on. It's oakmetal.com. Thank you so much.
absolutely.
Okay, and actually that concludes our workshop today. Thank you so much and everybody else for joining. This is recorded, KD. So we're and it's actually broadcasting live on on YouTube, but it's gonna be recorded since a lot of the people who registered had other things going on at this time, so I have to email it to them.
Okay, okay. And we do record and it's available for Oak Meadow for our webinar series. We don't share them beyond that. And we also, because so much is changing, I get a little worried about, you don't want to be sharing it with people a year and a half from now because
Yeah.
things will have changed.
Yeah, yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Well, thank you,
Super.
everyone. Thank you, Katie.
It's nice to see you.
See everybody.
Take care. Bye-bye. Thanks, everyone.